Today, I'm going to be speaking with a guest who was in Scientology's Sea Organization, their paramilitary branch, where you sign a billion-year contract. She started at the age of 12. Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm Natalie, and this is Scientology Life After a Cult. We talk about my 35 years in Scientology, leaving with 3 generations of my family, and speak to other people in the community who have had similar experiences. Thank you, everybody, for being here in the live chat. Good to see you. Thank you to the members of the channel for being here and your continued support. And of course, the moderators. Love you so much. Thank you again for jumping on another video today. I appreciate that you guys take the time to help us out here and keep those wheels on the bus. Today, I'm going to be speaking with someone who was in the Sea Organization from the age of 12. In fact, I knew her back when I was in the Sea Organization with my sister. And she's someone who's never shared her story before. If you have questions, if you could put question in all caps and have your question follow, I'll try to get to as many of those as we can. And I appreciate the kindness and the support because, as you guys know, it's not always the easiest thing to share your story about Scientology. And I know how beautiful all of you are and the support that you give to so many of us who are sharing our stories. I appreciate that so much. And big alohas, of course. I see so many alohas in the chat. Thank you so much. And when you come in and you walk on in here, hit that like button, hit subscribe as well, and set your notification bell to all. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Karin, and I want everybody to welcome her. Welcome, Karin. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I was just telling everybody how you and I knew each other when we were kids. You're a year younger than me, but you were working at the time in the Commodore's Messenger org, I think, with my sister Lana, right?
Yes, I was. Yeah, that's how we met, I think.
Yeah, it was because I always knew you as more like Lana's friend because I was in the lowly estates organization or then in the Continental Liaison office, which is like Dunder Mifflin level management for Scientology. But you and Lana were messengers and higher up. So in the Sea Organization, they wanted you pretty much, especially when you were a messenger, to stay within your own kind.
Yeah, for sure. You weren't allowed to slum with other people, which really was weird because you were like an older, more experienced person to us, which is hilarious because there's like a year between us.
I know. I thought you were so much younger than me because
Yeah.
Lana's 2 years younger than me. So when you and I were chatting, I was thinking like you were so much younger and plus you've hardly aged at all. So that throws me too because I'm like when I saw some of your pictures, I was like, oh, there's no. I was like, oh my gosh, you look like I would have recognized you if I saw you on the street.
I mean, it's all about lighting. It's all about lighting.
Girl,
That's
yes, you don't got to. People could see my lights from space that I have. Now, let's start off really kind of from the beginning because you were, and if anyone saw the thumbnail for this video, that was a picture of Karin, pretty much how she looked when she went into the Sea Organization. And for those that don't know, the Sea Organization in Scientology, we often talk about it as being their paramilitary branch. You sign a billion-year contract. You're working 7 days a week. You live and sleep in the same building often. You cannot just come and go as you please. There's all these restrictions because it is a cult. So why don't you start off telling us about how you came to be in the Sea Org at 12?
I think it started when I was 11. My mom at the time was taking classes at Flag or the Florida base, and I'm a kid, and I think I definitely was very rambunctious. I always needed something to do. So they had me stuffing envelopes, and I would stuff envelopes, and I was getting, who knows, I don't know, $16 a week or something in cash. I felt awesome because, I'm 11. And from there, it just kind of worked out that I was meeting all of the I mean, the HCO or, whatever their HR department's qualifications for being in the Commodore's messenger org. So by 11 and a half, maybe close to 12, I got recruited and went into the Sea Org.
What was that recruitment like? Did they sit down with you alone or was it with your mom? Talk a little bit about what that looked like.
Oh, I just walked in and signed. I was like, $16 a week, stuffing envelopes? Yes, sign me up. It I If you wanna know why I was so much younger to you at the time, I just think that I've always been a little bit of an immature person my whole life, so I'm just catching up a lot of times. So, I might have probably had the brain of, like, a six-year-old. I was gung ho, to be honest. I just signed up. I didn't know what I was signing up for, but it was better than going to school.
What was the situation with your parents? Like, were your parents public? Were they on staff in the Sea Org?
So it did start a long time ago. My parents, my biological dad and my mom were in Switzerland, and they met the Hefties. I don't know if you know of any of the Hefties, but I do know one. They were up at INT for quite a while, but they hadn't been in the Sea Org yet. But they did my parents' roof on a farmhouse that they had. And then they started talking about Scientology, the communication cycle, how to be ethical, and look at us, we have a great life. Would you like to have this life as well? And my mom and dad were like, yes, we would. And somehow I just remember moving to Florida. I didn't understand at the time that they were actually on the estates project force and trying to be in the Sea Org at the time.
Mm.
Just my brother and I went to the little daycare that was in Florida. Uh, I mean, we never saw them, but my parents traveled a lot before that, so it wasn't really unusual to not see them, and that is how they started. But my dad got sick. He unfortunately had cancer, and my mom said, "No more auditing. We are going to go see some medical professionals," because she's a registered nurse, and she definitely was like, "This is more than just take some counseling that, you know, my dad's mom's re my dad's relationship with his mom was terrible, and he had hoped that she would pass of cancer, and so that bounced back on him when she lived, and my mom was like, "No, this counseling is not gonna fix you." So we went back to Switzerland.
Yeah, and when you say counseling, are you talking about Scientology counseling or
Yes,
Scientology auditing?
auditing.
Okay, and in the
So
auditing, are you saying that it was at least his takeaway was that because he wished cancer on his mother is why he had cancer?
well, I don't know if that was his take on it, but that was Scientology's tack to keep him in and say,
Yeah,
"You pulled this in. You're responsible for your condition," which, oddly enough, I like being responsible for my own condition, but sometimes things are applied to you in a way that are not real
yeah,
in this case. So they ended up going back to Switzerland.
yeah.
My father passes away, um, and I don't I don't really know what to do. My mom is very young. She couldn't have been more than 28 at the time,
Mhm,
and she had, my brother who's a little bit mentally handicapped, and her group, her people were the people in Scientology. So we kind of stayed in that space as public.
mhm.
Then I went to the Delphian School up in Oregon, and that is also apparently a Scientology sort of based learning, and I was there until I was, like, off and on until I was, like, 11 or 12.
Mhm.
Then my mom had met a man down in Florida who she had a relationship with him, and they were on staff, they were public again. And I don't think she wanted to go back into the Sea Org because she'd already had her original experience and was like, "This is probably not for me."
Yeah.
And I came down to Florida, and that is kind of where I started stuffing envelopes and
Yeah.
saving the planet, and I just definitely just signed up. I didn't there was no recruitment. I don't actually know what happened on the back end with my parents. Like I said, I really was like a 6-year-old. I just I just no
Yeah.
concept.
So your parents were in Scientology, but not your grandparents.
Correct, correct.
Okay. So at 12, you join the Sea organization in Florida at Flag, and you do the Estates Project Force, which is like boot camp for the Sea Org. What was that like for you at that young age? And did you have a guardian or an adult that was in charge of you?
Initially, I didn't have a guardian. I was just on the estates project force, and we were the housekeeping staff. So for me, that was fun. I like the housekeeping staff. I I will say, I mean, that is a long time ago, and I have like snippets and glimpses of how my life was. I know I lived at the Quality Inn, and I know we bussed every day to school, which was me just reading books and putting on plays for people. Um, and then I think school would go from whatever 8 o'clock until like 11. They
Mhm.
would bus us back, and then I would be at the Commodore's Messenger org once I graduated the Estates Project Force. And that was it, day in and day out. I think I was the director of communication, which is
Wow.
great because, you know,
You like to stuff envelopes.
I love stuffing envelopes, which is hilarious because I hate filing, but I love the sound of filing. So that's
I totally get it. So when you were on the Estates Project Force, and like you were saying, the schooling sounds like it was kind of a joke.
oh yeah, for
And
sure.
you didn't have like, you're 12 years old, and for those of you who are listening and watching, think about yourselves at 12. Think about if you are a parent, think about your child at 12 and what they were capable of and not capable of, and imagine being in a state you're in that child being in Florida pretty much on their own. There's nobody there saying, "Hey, Karin, are you get sleep. It's time to eat. It's time, brush your teeth." All of those things. It's just you were completely 100% from 12, it sounds like, then taking care of yourself.
To a degree, right? Like it's so highly structured. You know
Mhm,
where you need to be and at what time, and you kind of are with the people that you should be with. My parents were still in Florida at that time.
mhm.
So I think I did get to see them for maybe an hour. Was it, when was family time? The
Like,
family
usually
time
over
or, like
dinner.
yeah, you could see your family for, like, an hour. Um, but mainly, I re I I do not remember a lot of that. I mean, I've been thinking about it, but I just remember being in the housekeeping staff and going to that school, and then, of course, at night, we study from whatever, 6 o'clock until 8 or 10 o'clock at night, in the estates project force, and I do remember that building distinctly, just studying the whole time. And at 12, studying things that are meant for people who are probably in their late teens or 20s, like, uh, it was difficult because especially like you don't know a word, right? If you don't know the definition of a word, you have to go through this whole word clearing process, which made me really savvy with words, and I could like read and understand things, but I there was no mathematics, there was no history, no geography, like nothing.
Yeah. That is a common thing in Scientology, especially the Sea organization, is sometimes for people who've never been in, will make the assumption that, there's a lack of education. There's definitely a lack of a well-rounded education, but often because of what we have to study to do the jobs we have to do, they make sure we know how to read
Oh, for
and
sure, for
right,
sure.
in most cases, because there's an expectation of you need to be able to study L. Ron Hubbard's word salad, and there's just so many different words and things in there. So you get through the Estates Project Force, and in Florida, you become a messenger. You are a Commodore's messenger, which everybody, if you're a Commodore's messenger, you are basically speaking for L. Ron Hubbard. So when other Sea Org members see you or would have seen Karin at 12, you have to address her as sir. Even if you're some 40-year-old dude, she is still sir to you because
Yeah.
she's a Commodore's messenger. Do you recall at all? Did you understand that hierarchy there?
No, and I think it was a little bit looser in Florida because the Commodore's Messenger org was all the way at the end, closer to, like, the Clearwater something or other. There was another little hotel down at the bottom there, so we were pretty far removed from the main base,
Yeah.
and I did not know that gravitas at the time. I remember a friend who went to international, I think her name was Cindy. I could be wrong about that. But I remember them telling her that you can't be hanging out with Corinne right now. She's a complete goofball and she is not the picture of what a Commodore's messenger is yet. So I definitely didn't get that concept because there were times where I would disappear for hours and go hunting for frogs. Like
Really? Tell me about that.
I would just walk off and do my own thing. And I think maybe just because the person who was my boss or she just understood I was a child, and she kinda was pretty loose with me, which was
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So but I did eventually get routed out, so obviously I was
Yeah.
not the star material that they were looking for.
Yeah, because
So
you were there, and often to get into the Commodore's Messenger organization or to work in the HR level of Scientology, which is the Hubbard's communication office, you have to meet certain qualifications that many Scientologists don't meet. A lot of people wouldn't meet. And this is why the children end up being recruited for those jobs because they
right.
haven't had a chance yet to try to threaten or unalive themselves, which is one of the rules, or doing drugs or certain behaviors that would be normal teenage or even adult behaviors that in the Sea Org or Scientology are seen as being so out ethics. And here you are, you're 12, you get through the estates project force, but you're still running off to go find frogs because you're a child. So at what point do they route you out of the Sea organization?
Um, so I think I was doing the job pretty well for what I was supposed to do, but I was getting things printed at the printing office, which that's a whole other can of soup that I those guys at the printing office weren't really on the up and up, but I spent a lot of time over there and because I didn't have anything to do. Like all I could do was write letters to people that basically were like, "Hey, we haven't heard from you in 5 years. What's wrong with you? Blah blah blah. You're out ethics. You need to come in right now." Ah! And then I would
Mm,
sign it with my big giant signature and send off the letter. Uh, so it
mm,
just definitely was a very weird time. But
yeah.
I got routed out for very specifically that I am a kid. My parents were not in state, they were in Chicago and I was in Florida. I did have a guardian and I saw her once a week. On Friday, we would go eat ribs and hush puppies
Hmm.
at a restaurant. And that was like the only real one on
Parenting.
one adulting that I got. Other than that, people probably must have been watching out for me. Um, I
Yeah.
can't say I hated it. It was just an experience. I was just so immature that I was like, "Well, I guess this is normal."
Yeah, exactly. That's how
Yeah.
I think it is and was for a lot of us. At some point, though, you end up going back to the Sea organization. Talk about when that happened.
That's the part I really remember a lot better. My mom then ended up with the person that she was dating in Florida, and that would be my stepdad. And my stepdad didn't really want to have children, and I think, like, retrospect as me being an adult looking back, he really wasn't capable of being a good dad or parent just because of his own trauma from when he was raised up.
Mhm.
So he was not verbally the kindest person. He was very verbally abusive and he occasionally was physically abusive. And I just wanted to get away from that. And they were both working at the Celebrity Center in Chicago, and a recruiter came through. And I just remember he's an older dude, and part of me wants to think he either had a mustache or a beard, and he just was crunchy looking. And I bet you he was only 50, but uh, he was like, "Oh, you want to be an actress?" And I'm like, "Of course I want to be an actress." Well, we have the gold division. You could be an actress in the gold division. And I was like, "Really? All right." Well, as soon as I hit 16, and like it was like a month later, and I was super excited.
Yeah, and
Hopped on the airplane. Go ahead.
that is something I want to point out that is often done, the bait and switch to recruit kids, teens into the C organization is they're told, "Oh, you want to be a musician? You could play music for Golden Era Productions." That's how they recruited my daughter. And
Yeah.
in this situation, "Oh, you want to be an actress? You could be an actress at Golden Era Productions." Almost no one ever makes it there to do that. So they tell you that you can do this and pursue this desire and passion you have by going back into the C organization in Los Angeles. What ended up happening?
So, I mean, my parents really can't say no, because the minute they say no, they are anti-Scientology, which means they get into a lot of hot water. Um, I think my experience might have been a little bit different than some people's, because my parents were giving a ton of money to Scientology. So, um, they still weren't able to say anything, so off I went to the Sea Org. I arrived, I got picked up by one of those shuttles, paid 25 bucks or whatever to ride the shuttle to Pac Base, and I remember getting off and just being like, "Wow, this is a big building," and I didn't know anybody. I got met by somebody, I have no idea, and they brought me to the lunchroom, and they had, like, remember they had the port and starboard side,
Yeah,
in the lunchroom?
yeah.
So, they were serving hamburgers, and I'm like, "Wow, hamburgers, I've never seen, like, a lunch line like this before. This is amazing." So, I had 2 hamburgers, and I just sat there going, "I wonder if I've made the right decision. Like, is this a mistake?" There was just a huge room of people. They were all just coming in to eat. There wasn't really any loud conversations. It was a little bit more sedate than I expected, and then off I went to the Estates Project Force.
Yeah, and you were 16 then?
I was, yeah, 16 on the nose, like
Yeah.
November.
Yeah, and that's when I was there. In fact, I was probably running the dining room at
Yeah.
that time when you came in for lunch. I would have been if you were 17, I was 18, and I might have still been there doing that. So you do the Estates Project Force again for Sea Org Boot Camp, which
Yeah.
if you leave and come back, you have to do. You're in Los Angeles. You think you're going to Golden Era Productions to be an actress. What actually ended up happening?
So I was in the Commodore's Messenger org, and eventually there was a huge recruitment push, and I was in that office where they were doing a ton of auditing for people to get them to be cleared to come back into the Sea Org. Like, they were doing this huge recruitment push for something. I don't recall what. And I was a runner. I would just run folders around, um, which I guess to me was fun. I really, what's really weird is, even though the conditions were not great, I too was in a room with 3 bunk beds high.
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4. So, what is that, 12 people?
Well, yeah, which
Um,
what bunk did you get?
I actually was in the bottom bunk. They were nice to me. Um, the thing is, I've always run so little and young that people just were just probably more like, "Oh my gosh, what is this little tiny speck of a human being doing here?" I know that she's definitely, uh, an adult in a kid's body, but, like, I think people just knew. Um,
Mhm.
and I remember, like, the experience was just that you wake up at like 7:30, 8 o'clock. You go to a communal shower at the end of the hallway, no scented products. Ugh. Um, the stuff, oh, it was so disgusting, that soap we had to use. That soap was awful. It was clear, it had no scent to it whatsoever. It made my hair like crispy straw. It was just bad.
Yeah.
So you take a shower, You run downstairs, you hop on a bus, they bring me all the way to, so I'm skipping a step. I was running those folders, right? Back and forth. And the big push turns out what they were recruiting for was the International Training Org. And the
Mm.
International Training Org was on the 3rd floor at the time of the PAC building. But what they were doing is they were building a new building that was off of Hollywood Boulevard. And I don't know if you remember that building, but it was beautiful and brand new. And every
The Hollywood
Saturday,
AMC building, the HGV.
uh, it was the one that was right near Tower Records.
It could be the HGB or like the what's now the Hollywood Testing Center
Oh,
area, but one of those 2. I remember back then.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was brand new. And really on Saturdays, I think we would go to do mest work. And it was
And
just
that's
us.
and that's
Oh,
work, just to
sorry.
let people know, that's like physical work. MEST is matter, energy, space, and time, the physical universe. So you'll hear in Scientology, "Oh, I was sent to do MEST work." That means you were sent to basically do physical manual labor.
Right. And it was all of us because it was a huge push. Like you could actually volunteer for this. And man, if there's something I'm good at, it's pushing stuff around. So we went and we would go and we were basically building this building and it was amazing. And I had had my doubts at that point. I think I was close to 17 or a little over 17 at that point, and I was already a little bit waffly. I was thinking about going back home, and I remember that's why they sent me to do the mest work, was to kind of, all right, we don't know what to do with you. We are going to security check you, and make sure that you don't have anything to hide before we send you home.
Mhm.
And I remember this building being so beautiful and awesome. And I'm like, man, I would love to be the receptionist here. Who do you think gets to be the receptionist? Me, International Training Org, the first face you see when you walk into the International Training Org. I will tell you the desk was like this high, so you couldn't really see me. I just was
Yeah.
like the top of my head. And I loved it. I loved getting all those phone calls and routing them to places.
Mhm.
And I, j- I, I have to say, a lot of my experience in the Sea Org for me personally wasn't traumatic at the time. It is
Mhm.
only later when I look back and go, "Oh my gosh, I lived in a room with, like, pigeons and garbage for a while. I, like, had no free time."
Pigeons and garbage, kinda elaborate on
Sorry.
that.
I do jump around, so I need you to kinda corral me.
Yeah.
Um, can we circle back to that because that's
Yeah.
closer to the end of my story?
Okay,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Um, so during this time, I'm in the International Training Org, and I'm now the receptionist. I'm super happy at what I do.
Yeah.
I'm not getting any training. I'm not getting any counseling or auditing. Um, I'm just living it's not 9 to 5. It's more like 8 to 10. And I remember my mom coming to visit and she was coming out for counseling and she was going up the bridge to total freedom, right? I
Mhm.
mean, this is the second time she was doing it. And I went to visit her and she would always, every time she saw me, would be asking, "Why do you have such dark circles under your eyes? And you should get more sleep." And it never clicked for me. Like it didn't register that I was working from 8 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night every single day for 6 days a week. And then on like Saturday or Sunday, we had 4 hours and it was called the Clean Ship Project, CSP, right? You could do your laundry with that trash soap you had to use that didn't have any
Yeah.
scent in it at all. Um, and I was one of the lucky people at the time. I was there when we got those big trunks. I don't know if you
Oh,
remember if you got your
yes.
trunk with like
Yeah.
your little tiny heels and like the skirts and pants. And I was like so excited that I got this full scale uniform. I don't know if I really had any private clothes. I don't, I don't even remember if I did. But that said, like, my mom was seeing the effects of what that grind looks like. I don't know of anybody who grinds that hard in the real world,
Mhm.
from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. But weirdly enough, it's made me a pretty strong person in general. So,
Yeah. But your mom noticed that. She saw the dark circles under your
yeah.
eyes, could tell that you weren't getting enough sleep.
But she had no idea. She had no clue what they were doing with us. None. And I was 17 at the point, so one would think that I was, you're over 16, you've got your GED now, you should be able to handle the world as an adult. And I'm sure that my mom still looked at me as a child, which rightfully so, but she really couldn't say anything about it. And I bet you if I told her, and I haven't, how hard we worked, and she had no idea. I feel bad for her because I know that she would have protected me if she had known,
Mhm.
but she
And she
couldn't,
saw and
you
she
know?
saw the signs, but she didn't know. So when she said this thing about the bags under your eyes and all that, you didn't tell her
No,
the
I
degree
did
of how hard you were working.
no. I didn't wanna put a bad light on Scientology in any way, and really, I don't know if this is how I'm made or if this is how I was made, if that makes sense. Like, is it
Oh, it
natural for
does.
me to want to save the planet and help people? Or is it that I've been indoctrinated into feeling poorly about not wanting to help somebody?
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? Like that help button. Um, Scientology definitely has a few like buttons that they push to try and engage you. And they use that help button on me, and that help button works really well. And so I just wanted to be a good helper. So definitely like um when we were in this ITO, when I was the receptionist, there were a lot of times where they were cranking out new old stuff. Um, they were revamping things, and we would have to pull all-nighters often to go and make sure that all the cassettes were filled into these cartridges and make sure that more stuffing of envelopes. Like there were definitely many nights where we worked until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then we would be given like 6 hours to sleep and then back to the grind of normal life. Like that's what was happening.
yeah. So at that point, you're working at reception and all that. So what happened from there? Because I know you didn't stay there.
No, and I do have to get my timeline right, and I haven't thought about this stuff in a long time,
Yeah.
mainly because I really thought that I would go crazy if I really hashed this stuff through,
Mhm.
really. Um, because all right, I am remembering something, and this is really funny. The reason why I think I'm so worried about going to this state of PTSD, what is it? What do we call it? PTS3,
Oh,
level 3,
type 3
type 3
PTS.
PTS.
Yeah, in Scientology, a potential source type 3 is somebody who basically is suffering from a mental health episode, and L. Ron Hubbard says a person goes psychotic
Yes,
with a big break with reality.
which I'm surprised more people aren't having that while being in Scientology. I In between the time when I was that folder runner and I was in the Commodore's Messenger org, then I was in the Commodore's Messenger org as a folder runner, but they could tell I really wasn't that mature, and they put me on a project. It was somewhere in the Hollywood Hills. I was watching Gilliam Leserve's first wife because
And
she
let's tell
had
people who that is. So Guillaume Leserve was the Executive Director International of Scientology.
yeah,
This is somebody who was high, high, high up, answered to David Miscavige, the Executive Director over all of Scientology.
right, and his first wife had gone this type 3. Um, she had gone crazy, they said, and we had a 24-hour watch on her, and my job was to watch her at night. Now just think, I don't even think I'm 17 at that point. That's why I had to backtrack, and
Yeah,
I'm sorry about that.
no problem.
Um, At nighttime, my schedule was to watch her from 6 PM to 6 AM to make sure that she didn't harm herself or escape from this apartment. I was there with another older man. He was a World War II veteran, and he would sleep, but he would have these PTSD, like, normal what psychologists now call PTSD, um, nightmares at night, screaming in his dreams, like, in the living room while I'm sitting and watching to make sure that, Gilliam Leer's ex-wife or whatever doesn't jump out of a window. And she was so sweet. I would lay by the door because I could barely, like, stay awake, and she would just say, "Hello," and go to the restroom or something. Like, she knew the program. She knew she was captive.
Yeah, and you weren't, so if it was a type 3 handling, so were you allowed to speak to her?
No, I just would nod my head because I didn't wanna trigger anything in her because part of that type 3 handling is lots of counseling or auditing, and I only assume it's sec checks. I mean, what else is it gonna be? I don't know. Um, and you cannot speak to that person because what if you trigger something in that person? And they're psychotic, so you don't want to catch the psychosis,
Yeah. So
which is so I oh, go ahead.
6 PM to 6 AM, did you have to stay awake the whole time?
Yes, it was very difficult. It
Yeah.
didn't always happen. Uh, yeah, and I was there alone. Like, if truly she was psychotic, um, it was an extreme disservice to her to isolate her in that way and to have a child watching her.
Yeah.
Um, it it just the situation is so absurd to me.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
um,
Did
but I
she have
remember
curly hair? Like, really
yes,
kinda
she
curly
was
hair?
French.
She was
She was
French.
French.
I
She
know
had curly hair.
exactly who you're talking about.
Okay.
She had her first, I think, mental health episode when I was training at the International Training Org, before it got moved to the new building. She was a course room supervisor.
Ah,
And
yes, okay.
I remember that something happened with her in that way, and I remember being told, because in Scientology, if somebody has a psychotic break or, if because in Scientology, there's no acknowledgement of schizophrenia or bipolar or any of that. So
Right, it's all false, it's all false.
yeah, it's just, "Oh, she's psychotic." That's what
Right.
they call all of it. "Oh, she's just psychotic. She's had a psychotic episode. She's type 3." So they mostly said she was type 3 and she needed to be on a handling. So I think she might have done this before because the time frame you're talking about is probably 2 years afterwards when I first met her and I had heard that. So you're there maybe barely 17 watching a woman who had a full-blown break with reality and wasn't doing well. You couldn't speak to her. Your job was to make sure she didn't leave. Did she ever try to leave?
No, she did not. And I I was just lucky that she didn't. That's all. I don't know if I there's nothing I could have done.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you recall how long that went on for or what happened to her?
I cannot recall how long it took. A lot of stuff back then is a blur
Yeah.
because of it's weird. See, look, it's happening. I think there's just a lot of stuff that happened that I don't know about, that I don't think about, and I don't talk about. And maybe it'll percolate to the surface now that I'm sort of like recalling that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but I just remember that being so absurd. And I just wanted to eat, which is weird. I went through puberty late, I think. I I remember at the time all I wanted to do was like make hamburgers because hamburgers had now become my only primary food that I loved so much. Hamburgers and chicken wings, which
Mhm.
do you remember you said there was a man who used to serve mid-rats at night and
Yeah.
you had almost gone to you were maybe able to go to his apartment for like a respite or something?
George. Yeah.
George.
George.
George was so kind, but he told me that chicken wings are the pigeons that they shoot down off the building, and I believed him. I definitely believed him that they were, those were chicken wings or pigeon wings.
He was lying though, right?
You know what? I can only hope so because there are not that many pigeons,
Yeah.
for us to have chicken wings, but that was the first time I had chicken wings. Alright, back to the story. So all I wanted to do was eat hamburgers. I really wasn't allowed it out of that apartment myself. I remember one time, and this I am very sure this lasted for weeks. I remember one time the other handlers that would come during the daytime said that I could go take a walk, and I walked around the neighborhood, and it definitely was the Hollywood Hills. It was pretty amazing to walk on a sunny day outside, and not be working. It was, like, really incredible, and I remember that one day so clearly. It probably overshadows all of the nights that I just tried to stay awake to make sure that, this poor woman didn't harm herself. And they tell you awful stories about a person who has a psychotic break, so you're afraid of that person and what they could do to
Do
themselves.
you remember what they told you about her?
I do, and I don't know if I wanna repeat that kind of stuff, but it's about, maybe taking her own life and doing things to her body that were not appropriate, and maybe she did and maybe she didn't, but I would just like to have that live in a box somewhere,
Yeah.
because it's not fair to her. I don't know where she is, and I don't know if she made it, um, but I wouldn't want those stories told about, even if it was true. It's just not ethical to tell somebody's story like that to frighten other people and
Yeah.
to keep that person in line, and shame
Mhm.
them for a psychotic break.
Yeah, no doubt brought on by Scientology and being in this organization
For sure, for sure.
itself with the sleep deprivation and everything alone. So eventually then you don't know what ended up happening with her, but you ended up not needing to watch her anymore?
Right. So this was like that interim between being a folder runner and then starting to work at the international training org. And I continued being a folder runner because was it Catherine, she was the French lady. She smoked so much. Oh, she was great. She had like this beautiful long hair and she was like the senior CS of ITO.
Mhm.
Mm, she was great. But I would run folders for her and I was her like admin and I just raced around the campus doing that. And this is when I started waffling and this is when they put me on mess work and I found out that this new building was so beautiful and I wanted to be the receptionist. So off I go to be the receptionist. I'm enjoying my life. Um, at first, we had really great food. Because food was really a great thing for me, and I was getting to be like a little chonker. It was pretty, fun, because I was going through puberty, and, I had seen my mom, and she was a little bit horrified that I was getting a bit chonky, and, so I had a roommate at that time, also a very beautiful girl. She had, like, all this curly, long hair, and I don't remember her name. But she told me a secret. She said, if you throw your food up, you can stay thin. So off I go into an eating disorder, unbeknownst to everybody else. And whenever I do something, I do it at 110%, if not at 120%, because that's how I've been trained. And man, I threw everything up. I would eat as much as I could in those new ITO lunchrooms up on the sixth floor or whatever. They had amazing food. It was like we were supposed to be feeling special because the whole world was coming to the ITO to be trained. So like they wanted to have a good image for everybody. And man, I would throw that food up. I probably could have, I mean, I don't know who intervened. I think it was an older gentleman. We ate lunch together all the time and he noticed that like my face was getting puffy and that like I looked like I had broken blood vessels around my eyes and he's like, "What's going on?" So he kind of stopped me from doing that, which was really tough to stop purging your food. I don't I I hope nobody has suffered from that and I apologize. I should have had a trigger warning on that. Um, you can't just stop throwing up. Your body just keeps doing it. But it felt like a sense of control that I was controlling my food because I had no control in my life in general. Because, hey, I get up 7:30, take my communal shower, hop on the bus, go to ITO, work all day until 10 o'clock at night, go home, hopefully get some sleep, maybe some shenanigans with a skateboard. And then we used to try and skateboard. It was hilarious. It didn't work very well. And then just, rinse and repeat. So I had some control with that. Um, but that didn't really work out for me, luckily. Um, so I remember that. But then all of a sudden, the food stopped being amazing. I guess ITO wasn't performing like it should. And we went on beans and rice. I don't know if you've ever only eaten beans and rice, but this is like government issue bags of rice and beans. I
Mhm.
think we had a choice of the whole beans and the mashed up beans. I don't know, what's
Oh,
that called?
the
Refried?
refried beans
Yeah,
and whole beans, yeah.
yeah. Whole beans, refried beans, and rice. That is exactly what you got to eat every day. And I don't know, ketchup and salt and pepper, which I think maybe this is where my disdain for pepper comes from.
Mm,
I just don't like pepper. I don't
yeah,
know why. Uh, but all kinds of sauces were still available, and I would try to make great meals out of that. But for months, we were only eating beans and rice. And I don't know if it was meant to be a cost savings or if ITO was doing so poorly in the world. I mean, we had hundreds of people arriving, hundreds. Like it was mandatory for people who were on site staff, uh, like non-Sea Org members, but staff members.
yeah,
They had to send these training groups of maybe 5 people up to be trained at the ITO, and I thought we were booming. It was wild times, like, people were walking through that front door all the time from all over the world. Yeah.
yeah. Scientology staff members in order to do their training. So when you guys were on beans and rice the whole time, it had to do something with the statistics or something like that, because that's usually what ended up happening.
Right, and
And
that's why I was surprised, like, thought we were booming, but I guess not.
yeah, and
It's
this
a
went on
time
for months.
months, months. Uh, yeah, months. I don't even how does one eat beans and rice? Like, breakfast was basically beans and rice. I don't understand. But yeah,
Just every
pepper.
meal for months. How did that play into when you were working through, like you said, the eating disorder? Is that something that continued even when you were on beans and rice?
It really helped. It was my cure because nobody wants to eat that much beans and rice, and you definitely are not gaining weight on eating beans and rice. And, like I said, that one man, I really do wish I would remember the names of some of these people. He really he saved my life from, having some sort of, myocardial infarction or a ruptured esophagus or something,
Because
like
he noticed, he could see in your face that something wasn't right.
right.
And he
And
said something, and did you tell him right away and admit what you were doing? Did you understand? Did it take a while?
I didn't really think it was wrong, as in,
Yeah,
like, I didn't understand the implication of what you're doing to your body. But when he noticed, it made me kind of step back. And then magically we went on beans and rice and I didn't want to eat that much. So it kind of helped. But your intestinal system goes backwards. Like you just automatically throw up. It's not even a choice at that point. So it was my own personal struggle. And slowly but surely, it started getting better. And then lo and behold, I catch mono.
mm,
Uh, and I don't know if you've had mono, but
mm.
your tonsils swell up like giant golf balls. And people noticed that I was like very sick and I was still coming to work. I didn't know. I just thought, well, maybe I'm tired or whatever. But at that point, there was another person who he was my boss. He was in HCO. He was over me as the boss. And he's like, "I think you need to go see the medical officer." And I went to see the medical officer, and they looked at my tonsils and went, "Oh my gosh, okay, you're sick." So I was sent down to that clinic that's down the street from Pac Base,
The Shaw Health Center,
the Shaw Health Center. And the man
which
kind
is run by Scientologists. For those who don't know, basically the Shaw Health Center had doctors who were Scientologists. L. Ron Hubbard's personal physician was there.
I didn't know that. Uh, I just know that when I went there, there were a lot of people who looked like they might not um, be economically blessed. It looked very run down to me. I don't know if that's true, but that's what it looked like or felt like to me. And I got seen by an elderly gentleman. He looked at my tonsils and he took one look at me and he goes, "Ah, yes, you might have some sort of infection." And he put me on antibiotics. Um, if you know how this works, if you go on antibiotics when you have mono, all of your blood vessels will burst on your skin. And I turned into a giant purple, like I was a blueberry, um, with these antibiotics within 3 days. And
Wow.
so I walked back to the Shaw Health Center sick and purple. And I walked in and I was like, "Is this normal?" And he was like, "Oh my gosh, okay." So he knew, he's like, "Stop taking the antibiotics right away. Just isolate yourself, get plenty of sleep, get plenty of water, uh, go buy some vitamin C." And my mom had somebody out that way uh, who was not my guardian, but like a safe place for me to land in case anything went wrong. Um, Remember how I said I'd been at Delphi School in Oregon? Well,
Mhm.
the girl that had watched my brother, who was 2 years old at the time, and I was 7 at Delphi School, she couldn't have been more than 16 or 17 herself, at that time, but she was an adult to me. Mary Ann, and she was living in LA at the time as well. And so, like, every now and then, if I could have like a day off or if I was given or granted a leave, I would go see her. She
Mhm.
had given me her credit card so that I could purchase vitamin C. And I think I bought a carrot juice. I was really excited about that. And I went back to isolation and
And isolation, for those that don't know, when you get sick in the SEA organization, you're sent to isolation. You're there with other sick people. You're not allowed to leave. Hopefully somebody brings you food. And the medical officer too that you spoke of, I want to make sure people understand that's not a doctor. It's a job in Scientology. It's called a medical liaison officer. In fact, Jenna Miscavige, as a child cadet in the Sea Org, that was her job.
was
Where
she in Flag? Was she in Flag as the MLO?
No, she was at the cadet org, but she was at
Ah,
Flag a couple of
okay.
times. A couple of
Mhm.
times. So you go and you have this connection who helps you out, and you get some vitamin C and carrot juice, and then you're stuck in isolation. Had
I'm
he
sorry.
diagnosed you with mono at that point?
I assume probably did. Here's the funny part. The ITO, was is it the CO? The
Commanding officer?
the commanding officer, what's her name, Jerry? Tiny powerhouse of a woman. Like, she could have I think she was like 5 feet tall,
Mhm,
blondish, older, just a powerhouse,
mhm,
like straight at you all the time.
yeah,
Uh, she had like a lifelong mononucleosis situation going on
hmm,
that I didn't know about, and I'm pretty sure I who knows? I don't know where I got mono from. At that point, I was not making out with boys or anything. Um, I just got mono somehow.
yeah,
But yeah, I was in this isolation room, and I don't remember who came and brought me food, but it was very rare and far in between. I was very sick. I was very tired. I lost a lot of weight. I lost a lot of weight because I was chonky, and then I was skin and bones. I was so thin. Like, Lana has always been uh, a tiny peanut, and her clothes fit me, which
Mm.
was unbelievable.
Yeah,
Um,
Lana, my sister.
Lana, your sister,
Yeah.
yes. Um, and I remember feeling better and better and better and slowly starting to, and they start getting antsy because they need you to cover your post. You need to go
Yeah.
back to your job. So I don't know how many weeks, I would say maybe 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a month, where I was in this isolation. And I would sneak out a little at night to see my friends and just kind of like schlump around because I was so tired, but I really miss seeing everybody. And I think this is when I did meet George because I didn't know there were something called mid-rats.
Mhm.
Um, and because nobody brought me food, but I was afraid to make anybody else sick because I was told that this is highly contagious. Um, Little do I did I know at the time that almost every single human being gets mononucleosis at some point in time. They call it the kissing disease or whatever because a lot of teenagers end up getting it. So I was trying to be careful. And I remember just getting a little bit better, a little bit better. And so finally I was well enough. And it was one of those big events that they have at the, what's that huge center where
The
we all
shrine,
go and
the Shrine
yeah,
Auditorium.
Shrine Auditorium. Well, they need a lot of bodies for that.
Yeah.
And I remember I was feeling a little bit better. I feel like Lana and I went shopping to this place up the street that like they had like $12 dresses, which were basically like for streetwalkers, most likely. Like,
There you go.
also trafficked people. I would be sensitive to them because not everybody chooses that life. They get harangued into it.
Mm.
Um, So we went and bought these dresses, and they were so slutty. Oh, boy, they were short and sparkly. And I remember feeling great because, oh, I've probably lost like 25 pounds or some crazy amount. I was finally skinny again. Um, and so we went to that event, and uh, I don't know. I guess you just go to the events, and then after that, I started working again. And then it just grinds on, and I meet a boy. Is it Roy Massey? Sorry, Roy. I don't mean to call you out, but he was so handsome, but he was also a kid, but he was like more experienced in the world. Um, and uh, we did some stuff. No, we didn't go all the way. Okay,
Mhm.
just some touchies,
With some
uh,
fun touching.
some heavy petting. But it was like my first real experience of like any heavy petting or whatever. And I remember, oh boy, I felt so guilty. Well, immediately, uh, maybe not immediately. I met his dad. We went somewhere, like on a road trip somewhere. And so I was thinking, oh, we're probably going to get married, because I touched his thing. So, and it threw up all over the place. So, whoa,
So we're
uh,
getting married.
we're getting married. I seen your inside, son. So I take the bus all the way to the center of the city, and I am probably close to 18 at this point. So I'm pretty adultish, I think. Uh, I get a marriage license. I'm telling you, Roy was not on board. Roy was an experienced human being. He's like, no, people touch each other's things all the time and don't get married. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
How old was Roy?
I mean, he had to be about the same age, I thought.
Yeah.
Um, but he did not know that he was basically engaging in a stage 5 clinger event where I was like, "Ah, yay!" So I went down and I got a marriage certificate and I brought it back with me, and he was like, no, I don't think so." So knowledge reports were written about what what filthy animals we are. Uh Um, So I think that was kind of like, that's where slowly but surely the next stage is happening where like I did not, and I'm feeling a little like rebellious at this point. This is that one time where Lana was, I think Lana was back from Int
Mhm.
and Cricket was around and we
Oh,
were
yeah,
like,
I remember cricket.
yeah, I love Cricket.
If
We were like
anybody
this.
remembers, I just wanna make a plug. If anybody knows or remembers Cricket, I know I can't remember her last name. She was a blonde girl with curly hair. She was good friends with my sister and you. We've been wondering whatever happened to her. Can you tell me, send me an email, Natalie@lifeafteraccult.com. Her name was Cricket. She was blonde,
She was from
really
Texas,
curly
I
hair.
thought. I
Okay,
think she was from Texas, and I did see her again at some point because I thought she was out and then came back. No, I'm confusing her with another person. I'm sorry, I shouldn't even. Yeah, no,
problem.
scrap that. So we had started becoming friends, and hey, Lana and Cricket had done whatever shenanigans they had done to get themselves demoted to
States organization.
the estates organization, which really was the coolest organization. The CO that you had talked about, man, was he a cool dude.
Was it
Uh,
Jane then?
it was I don't know at that point who it was, but
Or Italian
initially it was a younger dude. Um,
guy? Mm,
so we are living together, and this is the first time, like, we have our own bathroom. We have our own bathroom, and it's only 3 of us in a room. Only 3, not 12 of us, because they had the know-how. They had the in at the Estates Project Force. Well, guess what? The penthouse was open. Nobody was living in the penthouse. We drag all of our crap up there, and we are living large. Like, this is the penthouse. We had our own balcony to stand on at night. Like, this was craziness. It was amazing, and I don't even know how long that lasted
and
because
who was it?
it was just me, Cricket, and Lana in this huge penthouse with our steel bed frames, and I don't think it lasted too long because obviously things are sort of tightly watched, um, but this was the day that we blew. All 3 of us. I was like, "I'm not feeling well, I don't wanna go in." Lana goes, "Yeah, me too." And Cricket's like, "Yeah, let's get the hell out of here." And I think we climbed down some stairs on the outside of that penthouse patio, and we just left. We m Where did we make it to? I thought that we had hiked all the way to the Hollywood sign from,
Wow.
like, we'd gone straight up and we'd gone to the observatory. And this could be 2 days mixed into 1, so, Lana can shed better light on that, because there are 2 instances where, like, we blew.
Mhm,
Um, but I thought that that was the day that we climbed from the observatory all the way to the, Hollywood sign.
mhm. Just you 3 girls.
Yeah, and this is why don't wanna, like, confuse it, because there was a guy there with us as well, and at the observatory, we had met these. Alright, hold on. Thanks for letting me think for a second.
Yeah,
There are
take your time.
These are 2 incidents. One time, we did actually go from the observatory and climbed all the way to the Hollywood sign, and, like, this helicopter, "Get off the Hollywood sign," and we're like, "Ooh," and so we went straight down, and we ended up on, I don't know if it was Hollywood Boulevard or one of those big boulevards down there, and it took us forever to walk back home. Now, on this day that we blew, we also went to the observatory, and there was a group of guys who were, I think, in the 82nd Airborne Division on leave themselves, and I don't know if they were in the band. I don't remember, and Lana and Cricket are way cooler and more adult than I am that at this time, and they are like, "We're gonna go with them," and I'm like, Okay." And we did drive around a little bit, but eventually I was like, "Eh, it's okay," and I think they dropped me off at Asho in the front of Asho or the pack base, and I remember them leaving. And like, the wheels are coming off the bus at this point for me, right? I had that incident with Roy, I blew for a whole day, and, I think Federico Tizzi was coming to find us. They had a
Fed.
thing and they were gonna recover us, you know? And I think from what I remember, Lana and Cricket had, like, gotten on motorbike, like, on the back of, like, these motorcycles and, like, like, just living the life of an awesome 18-year-old, you know?
Well, and I
Um,
think they were younger. I think Lana wasn't even
oh, that's
18.
right. That's
She
right.
was
She's, like,
she
2
was
years younger.
Yeah, exactly. So she was like 16 or so when this was going on with that day, because I remember hearing about that when they took off. I forgot or I didn't know that you were there too.
Just
But
for
when
a
I
part of it, not the cool stuff. I was just
Yeah,
there
and it
for the lame stuff.
scared me that, like, they took off with these guys that they didn't even
Mhm.
know, and thank goodness, it was like nothing happened
They're
in
really
terms
nice
of them
guys.
being hurt, yeah.
Yeah, no, they were really cool guys. I think one of the guys might have been married and, like, they're in the military. I don't think that they were jerkwads. I think that they were on leave and they were just having a nice time.
Mhm.
Uh, but I remember them not coming home as far as I knew, but now we were out of housing, right?
Yeah, because you got
So
kicked out of the penthouse.
yeah.
Did you get kicked out of the penthouse after that?
Yeah, yeah, we did. But now we had no housing. And they had known of this other birthing spot, which was kind of a storage space. So we were told we had no housing. And I think this is slowly but surely like Lana and Cricket are like heading towards the RPF at this point.
Mhm.
And I didn't consciously not go there with them. I just wasn't as cool. Like, I just kind of a nerd, I guess. I don't know. I just wasn't cool enough to hang out with them.
And get in trouble with them because
Yeah,
that's what
well,
they
it
do.
would have been fun though. I think I would have really enjoyed it.
I mean, they were being teenagers.
Oh
When
yeah,
you think
normal
about it,
teenagers, nothing bad.
these are all kids in the Sea organization, and when you're living at home with your parents, you sneak out at night, like, you do these things, and you spread your wings, and you learn from your mistakes, hopefully.
Mm,
And these are behaviors, though, that in Scientology and the Sea organization are so severely wrong. It will land you on the Rehabilitation Project Force, which is like the gulag in the Sea Org.
right,
And it's just kids being kids, but there's no opportunity for that. And so many kids in Scientology, myself included, and being in the Sea Org, we don't have that time to make our mistakes and
right.
learn in a safe environment. When my kids made mistakes as teenagers, they did it in a safe environment. I was there to help them afterwards and be there, like, learn from it. And when you don't do that, it's like you grow up and you do it at some point.
Oh yeah, it just comes out, right? Like
Yeah,
when I look back, I just go, man, this have been the normal stuff I would have done anyway as a teenager. I would have asked my parents if I could stay out all night at a camping trip or something. But
yeah.
I eventually you're just shaking with like whatever that is, becoming an adult on the inside, but you're hemmed in on all four sides by an ultra high control group, as you've pointed out. And it just is madness. Like, you don't know where it's coming from. And then, of course, I feel really bad. I must be such a horrible person, blah, blah, blah.
When
But
really
now,
it's just normal. By the way, have you seen Lana since you left Scientology? Someone's asking.
that's a great question. So, Lana and I accidentally managed to find each other. And I think I give credit to Lana on that because I was on lines at the Celebrity Center because my parents were still kind of working there. And I got a phone call? I think she called me at the house. It was, like, amazing. Uh, and I have seen her, like, 3 or 4 times since then. I've gone up to visit her, and she's come down to visit me because I was in Chicago at the time.
Mhm.
And, really, our story is pretty parallel in that, we're trying to get out, but our whole families are still in Scientology, and I remember her asking me, like, "How did you do that? How did you go to a Christian church and, um, get saved?" And that was, like, when I made my official real break with Scientology was then, but it was quiet. I left quietly, and that's much
Yeah.
later in the story.
Yeah,
But
you quiet quit, but in the meantime, back to the story, you're running around,
yeah.
you're kicked out of your penthouse birthing, they move into a storage closet.
Well, so we don't know. It was just some place that had, like, and the wheels are completely off the bus. I had told somebody that so they were going through every single person that was in ITO to find out who is the SP, a suppressive person, who is the deadwood. Let's revamp and get this organization going, right? L-
Mhm.
Not like not like you couldn't just go, "Oh, our data is crap and we're charging people tons and tons of money and nobody wants to come." It wasn't the product's fault, it was our fault. So they're going through and some ethics officer called me or talked to me because I was still kind of trying to be the receptionist because nobody was doing the receptionist job. I had no place to sleep at night except this weird storage place, which was the ceilings were open, pigeons lived in here, the bathroom was unusable. Lana and Cricket were now long gone. I mean, and for all I know, it lasted for a few weeks, but it seemed like a lot longer. So I would go to this birthing place. I would just like kick open the door and go sleep there at night. And it was weird. It was like mattresses stacked on top of each other. I wasn't even in a real bed. It was so weird. But I had my trusty trunk with all my uniform. So now they call me and go, "Hey, we've been noticing that you've been trying to route out for like a year and a half." And I was like, "Well, I don't know about that for a year and a half, but yeah, I'd like to go home.
Yeah.
I'd appreciate that." Well, somebody locked the door to this storage unit and I was trying to beat it open. And again, 110, 120%. I was just banging on this door to break the lock. That's That's the last moment I remember when somebody had called security or something, and I was taken to the security office, and I was on a plane almost the next day or within a day, because
Why
I'm
do you
sure
think that was? So they locked the door, was it intentionally to keep you out of that room because your stuff was in there?
not maybe to get me away from my stuff, but I no longer
Because you
had
were locked
rights to
from the
birthing.
outside, right? Not from the inside.
Yeah, right, no, I was not locked in, I
Yeah.
was locked out. We had lost our rights to birthing. It was like a punishment.
Yeah. Was that pig's birthing where you were? Because that's what it was called back in the days.
Oh,
If you did something to lose your right to birthing, you were sent to what's called pig's birthing. And it sounds a lot like what you're describing. And it is as a punishment. So if you don't pass
oh.
room inspections or you're not making your bed, or I guess you move into the penthouse and then blow.
Yeah, true. Um, yeah, I don't actually know. Like I said, like a lot of it is a whirlwind for me. It was I just parts of me loved it. I love that grind. It's made me into a different person maybe, or like I said, maybe I've always been that way because I part of it was like, no, I think this is normal. This is how people should be. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, well,
But
I
yeah.
think that level of working, like, because that's something that I even still struggle with today, is that when you grow up in that environment, especially at a young age in the Sea organization, and it may not be true for you, but for me, it was this constant anxiety and demand to produce, and we judged ourselves so harshly if we didn't, that because I hear what you're saying, because I have thought the same thing. Well, I mean, it was a horrific experience by normal standards, but, it made me tough and resilient. But I have reevaluated that point of view in looking at it and realizing that there are other ways, like you grow up and through experiences as an adult, you can become stronger in ways. We had those experiences as children
Yes.
and we were never allowed to be children. So it kind of switches in ways where you're not allowed to do kid stuff. You have to be this adult with these adult responsibilities and no help or idea of how to do a lot of things. And then you get punished for it with adult punishments. and you're never allowed to be a kid, and then you always think that you have to work at that level all the time. Because when you say when you do things, you do it 120%, I totally feel that, and that's something I've had to work to not do,
Right.
because nobody has that expectation outside of Scientology of us. And when we enter into another job outside of Scientology, sometimes that work ethic and as hard as we work can be seen as a good thing, but then eventually, in my experience, it's seen as almost manic, the level to which we will work and work. Work is our default.
Right.
You know,
Right.
doing even the manual labor when I'm upset after Tony died, I
Yeah.
spent the next day and the next week in my pajamas cleaning and organizing hours and hours and hours and hours and hours a day.
Yes.
It's just what I had to do. And that it's an interesting and odd default, but I think that it interfered with our ability to relax and calm our nervous systems and just be. And I think that's why so many of us today out of that experience have autoimmune disease, neurological issues where our brains rewired. I mean, there is so much negative side effect from that, that I recognize that, okay, I see in ways the win was we survived it, we overcame it, and we're not rocking in a corner right now, at least not at this moment.
No. It could happen at any point.
Yeah, but you're
I
so used to just surviving and having to make it that that becomes the norm. Well, I'm doing
Right.
fine. It's okay. It's a fine experience because I'm surviving, but really, we're stuck in fight or flight. We're jacking up our nervous systems, and we have no idea of what it is to be able to be in a safe space to make mistakes and learn from them. So we hold
Yeah.
ourselves to a standard of perfection that is unachievable, and
Yes.
that can also mess with the rest of your life.
I'll piggyback on that. I'll wrap up how I got back home. They just sent me on an airplane, and I went back home, and that was it. And from there, I was like on lines and on staff, and I just slowly, slowly started to quiet quit.
Did
But
you have a freeloader debt when you left?
heck yeah, of course
Yeah.
I did. And
So
my
did they
parents
send
paid
you
for it.
away? I'm trying to understand the part about breaking down the door. Is it because you were breaking down the door that they saw that as being kinda crazy and they sent you away?
No, no. So remember we talked about the dead wood, and I had been trying to route out for a year and a half.
So they're just getting rid of the slack, like
They're
getting
getting
rid of
rid of
people.
dead wood, right?
Yeah.
And so that night, though, I got back to what was my birthing, and it's just me and some pigeons that live in this room,
Yeah.
but they had locked it, so I couldn't get in.
Yeah.
And again, it just goes back to this weird mentality where, like, you will make it go right. I have used that in my life so many times,
Yeah.
and it has helped me where it shouldn't. It's actually crazy. Um, and I will tell you, people who do long distance exercise, grueling things like signing up for, 100-mile marathons or whatever they call that, those people have trauma. They have to because somewhere they dig deep and they just make it. Um, so, and I have entered some of those events, not to that extreme, but that's where you dig deep. That's where you get that power from. Well, I made it here. I'm going to make it again.
Mhm.
But it was just in my mind. I'm getting in this room. That's it. And I was just banging the door trying to break it down, and security came and got me, which rightfully so, because I'm sure everybody on that floor is like, "What the hell is all that banging?"
Yeah.
Um, and I was on an airplane within a day because I'm sure they called my parents and were like, Deadwood, get this one out of here." I had a freeloader's debt. My parents paid for it, which was really nice of them. I then went back on lines to do more auditing or counseling, which guess what? I think most of my counseling and auditing is all security checks. Like it was down to a point where like I saw that there was a napkin that was left on the dining room table and I felt guilty because I left it there, not knowing if it was clean or dirty. Like to that point. So let's fast forward through life and what like that trauma actually manifests itself as in a real world situation. Like you said, there is no relaxing. I hear a car door slam or somebody coming home, I am like at 90. Even I'm relaxing the most relaxing day ever, and I force myself to relax.
Mhm.
And that took a long time to do, to just be okay. You are allowed to sit down and watch 3 hours of TV and eat some chocolate chip cookies. Like, that took forever to be allowed to do that, and I have gotten better at it, and it's helped because I've made a lot of friends that are not Scientologists at all, who are never-ins, who probably don't know all the stuff that I did go through, but I have been at 11 for so long. I think it's been changing for the last maybe 7 or 8 years. I've gotten more safe, but even when I work at work, talk about, like people who have had an abusive relationship. Maybe they grew up abused, then they enter into a abusive relationship because that's what they're comfortable with. This is what they know. They know the outcome, and so they enter a abusive relationship. For me, that has looked like this. Every type of work that I've entered into has been weirdly abusive. So I don't know if anybody out there is in research science, but if you're in academic research science, that is like oddly like being in the Sea Org. Like, everybody's dedicated to saving the planet. Everybody is grinding it out and competing for resources. You are working hard. Are you working from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m.? Not every day, here and there, but you're definitely often putting in 9 to 10-hour days,
Yeah, you're
um,
talking about your time outside of the Sea Org when
outside
you
in
were a member of
research.
Scientology. Yeah.
But, like, I found my comfort space, which was this same sort of, like, abuse, and, like, if something went wrong, I took it so personally, and, I don't know what that is, like, where you just feel like you're so responsible for everything that's happening around you, when in reality, it's not always, you know,
No.
your responsibility.
That's very common, and I think we see it manifest even further sometimes where it's not just feeling like we're responsible for everything. Because I remember going through that before, but that we have to take action just because we see an out point. That massively interfered with my life because I felt like I had to correct everything wrong in the world,
Yeah,
and it took a long time until only a couple of years ago when I figured out, not my monkey, not my circus. I don't need to correct every out point. If I don't like it, well, then I'm not going to engage and interact with it. I'm not going to have it in my space. I don't need to go change it, correct it, fix it, tell you what you're doing wrong, stop doing that, and all
right.
those things. Tell me about your experience with that.
So, I'm still on that journey of fixing that, and I think that's part of growing up too, right? Like, initially, people don't understand their space or surroundings, right, when they're kids or whatever, and then eventually you kinda turn into an adult and you start realizing that you have some responsibilities and you need to take
Yeah.
care of things. But in Scientology, you're told to make everything go right, that you are definitely this supreme being who can get everything done and you'll find a way, and that almost everything is your fault. Like, anything that happens to you is definitely your fault. You're responsible for it. And so it makes you kind of a really responsible person. And I don't think that's only unique to Scientology. Like, I see in academia, the science side of it, I see a lot of PhDs and postdocs like destroying themselves trying to get things done. So for me, what I've learned is that I'm allowed to work my 8-hour shift and clock out. Like, nobody's paying me overtime. I would work so much overtime that was unpaid because, oh, I'm saving the planet in my own weird, crazy way. Um, I d-
You mean in
and
your job after the Sea
oh
Org?
yeah, and my job after the Sea Org. Um, And I think part of that is, finding good mentors that, can, like, sort of protect or protected me and like, were like, "You're out of control." So it wasn't all just from me, and I think I'm still on that because if there's work to do, I'm probably gonna do it.
We don't I feel like we kind of don't know when to stop in ways, or we feel like because I can do it and I can take it on, especially when it comes to work. It's something that I've been talking about lately on my channel, where realizing like the level that I worked at before does not have to be the way that it is, because where did it get me? It got me success in my job and my career, which I absolutely love, but it also, I missed out on a lot. There's things like that I'm processing today that just I was in survival mode for such a long time. When you leave Scientology, especially those of us who left with no education, the first thing I did when I left Scientology was get a GED at 40.
Yeah.
So to that work balance thing. So you said you're still kind of dealing with that. But tell me, when you went back, when you routed out and they sent you back to your parents and they paid off your freeloader debt and you were doing services in Chicago, so you continued as a Scientology public for how long after that?
I'd say probably until I was 21 or 22, because I had a boyfriend, that was a Scientologist at that time. Um, I just thought it was like our way of life, and that the Sea Org, I had failed. So I just wasn't cut out for that. And I did my Key to Life, and I did another course that was like supposed to be awesome and make me grow up. But during this time, I have always enjoyed school. So after my dad passed away, there was some money there, and I applied all of that money every single time to like going to the boarding school or applying it to classes. Like I just love school in general. So I had had my GED, and I was wondering, what am I going to do in the world? And my water pump on my Camaro failed. And because I make it go right, I replaced that water pump all by myself. And I went, wow, this is something I'm good at. So I went back to school and I took a lot of remedial classes to get back into getting an associate's degree in automotives. And that served me well for a while. And then I really wanted to kind of grow a little, and and this must happen from, you're a mom. I don't know what your relationship is with your kids, but I feel like kids want to have their parents' approval, or maybe it was just me. I really wanted my mom's approval, and I don't think she fully was like excited about me just being a car mechanic, because the reality is I was slow quitting Scientology. I was just kind of like stop. I did all the counseling that I was supposed to do. Then I did some classes that my parents thought would be good for me. And then I just slowly started getting away from that. I started dating somebody that wasn't a Scientologist. And I still had those, like, I had the ethics book. I applied the conditions to my life. Like, I really believed in all that Jeopardy junk was real. And this is how you're going to succeed in your life. And that's why I was so awesome. Um, Not that I just was delusional and thought I was awesome, but I was just a normal human being. And I would like try to apply those ethics conditions, and I would like read stuff, and my mom would still be like, well, the reason why this is happening, here's like a paper that you should read to like see why this is happening. So it was like we were still really engaged in that, and probably up into the time I was like 28, I was, no, 26. I was still like fully in, not going to class or anything, not going to the org all the time. Sometimes I would go down to the Chicago org or the Celebrity Center, but I was slowly distancing myself and getting like people who had never been in as my friends. And I had gone through a relationship breakup that was really hard on me, because it really was like, because I, maturity wise, we talked about this before, I'm just not that savvy or mature. So I was in this relationship and it broke up, luckily, because we just weren't a good match. But we had been together for 5 years or 6 years. Like, it was the longest relationship I'd ever had. And it crushed me, like crushed. I didn't know how to live without this person, even though this person was not good for me. Um, And a friend of mine said, "Why don't you come to church with me?" And this was a free evangelical church, and they were doing a series on Matthew. And I don't know if you've read Matthew or had an opportunity to read any of the Bible. For me, it was like the first exposure to another religion. And Matthew is very ethical. He is the guy who has a lot of ethics in there. And ethics is something that's been used on me since I was 12. It felt comfortable. And so we did the whole series on Matthew, and I was like, "Yes, I'm saved. I'm saved. Jesus is in my heart." And I got baptized, the whole 9 yards. And it did save me. What it saved me from was this messed up way of thinking in Scientology. That's what it saved me from. Um, I don't know now, and I am not in any sort of religion just because I've seen what the worst of what a religion can do. And I am not willing to be in any outside control group. Like, if I cannot discover why something is the way it is, as in like critically thinking through it and having like evidence-based uh, knowledge versus like, well, it is this way because we said so.
Mhm.
I can't buy into it. And so like 26 is, yeah, 29, between 26 and 29, which is a huge gap. Somewhere in there, I just was quiet quitting Scientology. And even I think until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I still wasn't like fully out because, of my mom. I don't want to lose contact with my mom. I don't want them to force her to disconnect from me because
Did your mom know that you were quiet quitting Scientology?
I think she watched it and she knew. But she still was like, "L. Ron Hubbard's data is really good though, right? Like, we can still apply this to our lives, and this is what makes life good." And I would just be like, "Mhm, yes." I would just, you know, I didn't wanna hurt her feelings because she spent a lot of money and a lot of time on that, and she lost the opportunity to be with her children, because we were gone all the time. Like she was gone, and she did work a lot with my brother. So like my brother has a different experience in the world with Scientology. I don't think because of his uh, brain damage that Scientology really was considered him an able-bodied person. And so we're not willing to help with that situation at all.
Yeah, because Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard says Scientology exists to make the able more able.
Correct.
So if your brother had any type of medical or mental or physical, well, physical disability is one thing, but if he was mentally handicapped in any way, they would consider him to not be able. And you're
Right.
saying they wouldn't help him. That's interesting too for your mother to have one child who's gone off into the Sea Organization 2 times and then have the other one that Scientology wouldn't help anyways on account of his handicap.
I mean, I just have a lot of empathy for people in general. I Okay, there's some people I don't have empathy for, but I guess because I don't understand them. But like, I just look at my mom's experience. She was very young. Her husband dies. She has a child, me. I am full on ADHD. Not that we knew what that was, but like, it's tough to parent a child with true ADHD. Like, they fly off the handle. They are impossible to get to relax to start with, right?
Mhm.
So, like, that's why I always say this. I don't know if Scientology made me this way or if just this is me anyway, right? Um, and then she has this child who now newly is brain damaged. We didn't understand that he was brain damaged. We knew he was a little bit slow, but it turns out he's kind of pretty much missing his corpus callosum. So the right side of his brain doesn't talk to the left side of his brain. He's a very sweet and kind man. He can function in the world. He has a job at the Goodwill. I think 4 hours is his maximum limit, but he's very sweet and kind. But can you imagine, you have two children. You didn't expect your partner to go,
Mhm.
um, you are lost at that point. I think
Yeah,
she felt lost, and the
yeah.
people who were there for her because she had been in Scientology before that, and they had blamed her for my dad's death.
What?
Uh, no,
Scientologists?
no, sorry, the family. The family had blamed my mom for his passing because they had been in Flag for so long and getting counseling instead of chemotherapy,
Because
and
cancer.
because it's cancer. So kind of like the family had kind of marked her as the outlier and not really part of the family at this point. She felt better in Scientology because that was an accepting group of her. Like they were on the same wavelength as her.
Yeah.
So that's probably really what kept her in there. Is this It was a safe space for her. They helped her. They like made her feel okay about herself, you know? So I understand. I think one time she tried to apologize to me and I
Mm,
wouldn't let her because she she didn't do this to harm us. She
yeah.
did this because she too was in survival mode.
Mhm.
She had crazy stuff happen to her,
Yeah,
you
same.
know?
I feel that way about my mother too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not for her thing. Anyway, so now I'm I'm getting more and more out. I get saved. I'm more and more away from Scientology, and this breakup is still crushing me. It was a weird breakup. I don't we walked down the aisle twice and he never signed the paperwork, and he had another girlfriend. So it was like very like it was like Gaslight City, and like
Wow.
his family was fully on board with this other girl and I didn't know, and it was just the weirdest experience I've ever had, and I've already been in like a mind F of a group my almost my whole life, and I just was like I that is when I had my full like rock bottom breakdown. And just mentally broken down. I didn't Luckily, I never really had to deal with any substance abuse problems or anything. I just was broken as a human being. Like
Mm,
somebody had come told me that Santa Claus isn't real when I had really believed Santa Claus was real. Like I was just
yeah.
crushed. So I moved to Pennsylvania. And when I moved to Pennsylvania, that was the final schism where I finally let go. I didn't find an organization here. I took my ethics book and I threw it in the garbage. I I didn't give it to Goodwill. Nobody else is gonna need this. Uh, which although that still sticks with me. I still like if I start a new job, I make sure that I come out of non-existence
Existence.
and I go and I introduce myself to every single person I possibly can introduce myself to, and then I can see it slipping where, like, people are bypassing me and, like, doing my job for me, and it irks me because I am failing, like, that's a flunk. And I really struggle, and all they're doing is helping. They're like, "It's
Yeah.
teamwork, dreamwork here, okay?"
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that funny? I learned that too, that because in
Ah,
Scientology, for guys who for people who might not know, there's an organizing board. So every person has a job on this board. So you could have this person has this junior, and you're not allowed to break the chain of command.
right,
And so if somebody passes you to deal with somebody under you or do your job, it is a severe like you have failed. Yet outside the world in Scientology, there's collaborative teamwork
right,
where sometimes you even cover for each other.
right,
I had to
not
learn
allowed.
the same thing. Yeah, and I'd be like just so much more I was so much more black and white about things
Yeah.
and efficient to the point of almost being manic where it was weird to other people
Oh, I've
and
grabbed
realizing
work out of other people's hands that I thought was my work, like, "That's okay, I'll do this," whoosh, and I will grab it from them, and I am in no way ashamed of that in any way where, like, I've had people who are like, "Oh, that's alright, I can come in and weigh your mice for you on Saturday," and I'm like, "No, don't do it, I'll come in and weigh your mice."
yeah,
Ah, and I mean, I'm still working on letting go, like, it's very funny. Well, not really,
yeah.
it's trauma.
I know. Does
Um,
your mom so where's your mom at in all of this now? Because when you moved to Pennsylvania and you were pretty much away from Scientology, you didn't seek out another organization, you threw away your ethics book. How did that affect your relationship with your mom, with her being a Scientologist in good standing?
so
I mean,
she was in
technically, you were still a Scientologist in good standing.
Oh, yeah, they were calling I don't know how they found my phone number, dude. They, like I've changed my phone number, like, 5 times. They have found my cell phone number every single time, and they would call me. I got to the point where I just would put them on speakerphone at my work and just talk to them, because it turned out my mom had also been quiet quitting, but wanted to stay in good standing because they had taken so much of her time, her energy, her life, and her money.
Mhm,
She is not giving them that satisfaction of saying, "Oh, you're not in good standing." So, and she still really does hold to the principles. She does really truly believe L. Ron Hubbard was a genius, and he really truly was able to coalesce many different, maybe religions or ways of thinking that turned into a successful way of living your life. And I'll challenge anybody, go do the basics. Don't enter. Do not enter, but like learn those basics of how to communicate with others, how to be ethical, how to plan your day, like things that you can learn in other areas. You don't need to learn them there,
mhm,
but
exactly.
they will help you make your life more successful. That is the catch. That's
The
the
basic,
barb.
basic, basic the
Yeah.
basic things,
Yeah.
the basics of organization, the way yeah, the efficiency of it. There is a lot around efficiency,
Yeah.
and I don't know about you, did you ever, like I had so many times in my relationship with Tony where he would wanna do something, and I'd be like, "Why would we do that? What's the product? What's the point? Can I sell it? Like, I'm not understanding why we would do that." And he's like, "Because it's just enjoyable." And I'm like, "You're nuts."
Not until I met my husband, Jason.
Mhm.
He's a never in person. He is easygoing. He loves me just how I am.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Totally okay. I totally get it. And it's a beautiful thing to have that and have that acceptance after everything that you've gone through.
And it doesn't mean we haven't had hard times. There are times where I'm like, I'm not engaged in this. I don't want to be in this, because the only way I've known how to handle that kind of stuff is just walk away from it. Um, but he's taught me how to really build a real relationship with another human being, have empathy for another human being, uh, deeper than just, oh, I understand why you would have acted this way.
Yeah.
Um, but like him and his family, his mom is also a very kind person and just lets me be who I am. That has been that has been what's grown me the most. So like when people say that they don't need other human beings, you just haven't met the right human beings that let you be who you are, you know. So I've been lucky to like surround myself. I have two why am I so cry? What is this?
Totally fine. It's a totally safe place to cry. It is okay to cry. It is okay to express and feel those emotions. No
I
one
say
should
that to others. I say that like crying is an emotion just like laughing. It is just as valid.
yeah,
Um,
it's
but
totally okay.
usually I'm not a crier, but who knows? Menopause happens too. No, I have great friends. I mean, I have like 5 friends. Woo! But I have like just 4 really close friends who just let me be who I am, which is amazing, and that has done wonders for me for my mental health. They've even, like, let me, like, throw some snippets out there about Scientology and not go, "Ooh, you're weird," like, they just take care of me, and I just appreciate them for who they are. I bet you my friend Lori's watching this if she hasn't checked out already. I love you. Thank you for being my friend, even though I'm a weirdo and I'm hyper controlling. I know everything about everything. I tell people what they should do when I've been working on that too. I'm like, just cringe, shut it. You do not have the answer to everything, even though you were told that you know everything. Like, I definitely am still working through stuff, but having Jason has been awesome. He's even showed me how to relax. Like, exactly. Why are we doing this? There is no end goal. There's no product. We're not getting anywhere. And he's like, no, we are just going to watch a movie and lay around.
And
And
not work
no,
at the same time.
and nobody's going to feel guilty about it. Like you can't feel guilty about it, which
Yeah.
is weird because I definitely 100% it, and again, like you said, it can be helpful, but it's like a trauma response.
Yeah, it can be helpful if it really is that much of an emergency. I
Exactly. You
say
just
I'm like, you might not, especially not all of us, some of us, it's like in going through that experience and learning empathy and compassion later, we learn it and we feel it, but it's like really, it's like I tell people know sometimes about me, it's like if you're going into battle, it's like I'm the person you want with you, like, but if you
right.
really need just more of just solely that nurturing, complete energy,
That's not
that's
me.
what we were not allowed we're allowed to be in that space, and it's so interesting to see for us to figure out that we can be both, that's all part of us, that we can be vulnerable and strong, right? That we can
Yeah.
be bright yet naive, that we can be all of these things. We are all of it. And I think
Right.
that's what you're saying, that point of being of acceptance and being accepting people where they're at, loving them where they are, and then growing together is magical and doesn't
It
exist
is.
in Scientology.
Oh yeah. It's very judgy in Scientology. Like everything is to be judged. Even if it's a good thing, it's probably rooted in some crappy thing. Like it's very M I they used to call me the rainy cloud of doom, not in Scientology, but after Scientology when I would meet normal people, because something good would happen and I'd be like, "Man, that's probably this is happening."
Yeah.
So, I'm less and less of a rainy cloud of doom, but that's really partially because of my friends, right? They've accepted me for how I am, or like if I have my own little, I just can't talk to anybody right now, or I'm shutting down, or like they've understood it. Unfortunately for them, I am not the softy person to come to if somebody has a relationship problem. I am very much into either solving the problem or saying these following awful words that have come out of my mouth, which is, we are all responsible for our own condition. I have said that more times than not. And sometimes it's true, but sometimes it invalidates that other person. So I'm sorry if I've ever done that to you. I've invalidated you
Yeah.
and your experience. Um, because, yeah, part of it, I've definitely put myself in some crummy situations. Like I knew I shouldn't have been in certain relationships or followed a certain path. Um, but you don't know until you get to the end of it that, whoa, hindsight is 2020. I shouldn't have engaged in this in any way. So I definitely am still working through that where I just go, you're responsible for your own condition. Like just this weekend, or this week, we're having a garage built and I moved the building by 1 foot, which then, and nobody knew that the sewer was there. We punched right through the sewer line when they were building it. So, I'm up till 10 o'clock at night forcing Jason to, we dug up our whole sewer line and rerouted it, like, because you make it go right. So in those situations, like I still have that in me. And I think it can be helpful to
Mhm.
not just lay down and cry and go, okay, well, I need a plumber. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, exactly. So Google it.
I do
Next
Google.
level, though, I mean, digging up a sewer line. I thought it was badass because I fixed my own shower inverter, the thing you lift up and the water comes out and
Oh yeah.
messed
Yeah.
up, and yeah, I fixed that, and I thought, like, that was amazing. Digging up a sewer line is next level.
And that just comes from I invite like traumatic situations into my life. I think I need that pressure sometimes. We don't think like Jason will spend more money than I will. Um, but when we were looking for another house, I wanted a fixer-upper because that's what we did for our last house. We got a really good return on it, and that's the way, because science doesn't actually pay that well. Academic science doesn't pay that well. You do a lot of work, but your remuneration is quite minimal, but you feel really great about what you're doing. So I'd like to live within my means. So
Mm,
now Jason wanted to move to this really nice area that we like, and it's right next to a park we like. So we found a house that was unlivable. I think my friends came through this house and went, uh, okay, good luck. And within 6 months, I was able to make this house livable. It's
mhm.
very cute. Look, see my wall? It's very nice. It's our little coffee area. Um, but like, that's when I could dig deep. And I just don't have that off switch that says, no, this is too deep. Like, I just say, well, how hard can it be? I've dealt with worse. I can make this go right. So it's, the trauma doesn't leave me at this point yet. I still look for reasons to be that hyper focused and absolutely insane to get something done. And
It's
again,
normal. It's what feels
yeah,
normal
it
to
feels
you.
good. It feels like I'm accomplishing something. I almost feel like you said, like I can't really relax yet. And again, I don't know if that's just how my brain is wired, with that ADHD on board. I don't really know. Which, ooh, you know how like Scientology is like big time anti-psychiatry and psychiatric drugs and
Mhm.
stuff? Mm, 8 years ago, I literally just was at my end. I was so depressed in my own private personal life. And I'd always had bouts of depression, but my mom would just be like, knock it off, cut it out. Right? How many times have you been told to knock it off and cut it out?
Yeah, quit being
Right?
baby.
Don't dramatize, no dramatization, not required. And I just went and I said, I'm always anxious about everything. And now I'm starting to get like super depressed, whatever. And I unwillingly but willingly took Lexapro
Mhm.
for my generalized anxiety. And every part of me, because of my history in Scientology, told me that this is so wrong. But I also was like, I'm not functioning.
Yeah.
Um, which is ironic because probably my experience in Scientology is what created this generalized anxiety to start with, where I was always at this 11 point. I took that for a year and it was panacea. I finally was able to function. My brain didn't jump all over the place. I wasn't so abjectly depressed because of my anxiety, like worn out. It was beautiful. And I do believe, because I've done research in neuroscience, and I am not a real researcher. Let's be clear. I have a 4-year degree. I am a technician. I am the hamburger flipper of science. Um, but I still learn. I'm not doom. And you can rewire a brain
Yeah.
and you can have neurogenesis. These are real things. Um, and I believe in that year, I was able to maybe live in a different space and more relaxed. And when COVID hit was when I went off of it because I thought, all right, we're all going to die anyway. So I'm just going to enjoy it. Uh, but I tapered off and it was the best experience for me because it also made me, what is that? I am no longer per the HCO, Hubbard Communications Office. Is that right?
Yeah.
That can't be it.
No, that
There
is it. That's you're
it
right.
is.
Harvard Communications
All
Office.
right.
Yeah,
So I'm no longer HCO eligible to
qualified.
go up lines, to get certain kinds of auditing. I have taken psychiatric drugs. Merry Christmas. I am literally the worst person. I have no money. I've been on psychiatric drugs. Ooh, I tried mushrooms once. I guess that's close to being taking LSD. That's another big no-no. Um, like I'm an HCO nightmare at this point, so I'm pretty sure that they would never like come for me anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I've made myself very ineligible. You're welcome.
I know the feeling. I know someone, I have a friend who she blew the Sea Organization, went and did LSD so just so she wouldn't have to go back.
Man, I don't know, that's like a bad place to take a trip from, if you think about it. Like, I don't know what your headspace is like and what your trip
Yeah,
is gonna be like.
even that enjoyable.
Uh, but
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
how now are things then with, like, with your mom? Because you are not only are you completely out, but you've now publicly shared your story, which is an entire different step. And audience, people who are watching, I think a lot of you who've been following my channel or other channels for a while in this, ex-Scientology community understand, but it is a humongous step to go from leaving Scientology to publicly saying, I've left Scientology and this was my experience. It is a humongous leap.
Thanks for
And
freaking me out,
oh,
okay? I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get, like, some phone calls or something. Um,
you know
my
what I mean,
relationship
though. It's a change.
Yeah,
It's
it
different.
is.
Like, yeah, you must like things with your relationship with your mother and all of that. Like, it sounds like that's good.
They could ask me to disconnect probably or ask my mom to disconnect from me. I highly doubt that that would happen, because I've been drifting for so long,
Yeah.
and they are always trying to find her through me and they have. They've, like, gone to her house because she has money,
Mhm.
And when I say she has money, no more than anybody else. She's not, like, super rich, but, like, they've pulled so much money out of her that they probably just think that she could be a resource again. And that goes back to remember when Cricket and, Lana had been routed to the RPF.
Yeah.
I definitely should have been routed to the RPF, but they didn't route me to the RPF because I think they were pulling so much money out of my parents or my mom and my stepdad at the time
Mhm.
that I don't think that like, I was it was a I got by that privilege of them being so engaged and having so much money, right? Like, um I that's what I think, because I definitely was RPF material.
Yeah.
Like,
What
the
made
wheels were fully off the bus, and the way they handled it was just route me out instead of keeping me in.
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that.
They're
Uh,
hedging their bets, right? Like
yeah. One question here is why come out now? Like, what inspired you to come forward and share your story now?
probably because I'm growing as a human being, and I don't want anybody else to get caught in this trap, and I feel a little bit safer now because I've surrounded myself with people who are never ends, not intentionally, but I definitely am, like, creeped out by somebody who's like, "Oh, I was in Scientology," and I am immediately, like, on high alert that they are going to watch me or report me, um, and I don't have any ties, and I don't have anything that can be taken away from me. I
Yeah.
don't really have anything,
Yeah.
um so if they decide to, like, fair game me, I think that I've built up my reputation enough, and, like, um when you work at a children's hospital, which is what I do, we have extensive background checks and like FBI checks and like it there's, I mean, I'm probably just tempting fate by saying something like that, but also I just didn't know that there was a platform for me to tell my story because I actually never talked about Scientology until real recent. Like, I don't think people really heard about it until like maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Mhm.
Some people I've had like more intimate relationships with, they might have heard that, hey, I've been in this weird cult, but I've been letting it slip out for a little while now. And
Yeah.
just felt right for me that this might be the time because I have a platform with which to put it out there that's in a safe space. And I just feel more comfortable in who I am as a person so that
Yeah.
I can't, hopefully I don't get gaslit into some crazy thing. But I will say for a long time, I didn't look up any anti-Scientology propaganda, which is not propaganda, but that's how I thought of it,
That's what they
um,
call it.
because they call it that. And I was afraid that I would go into this weird. PTS type 3, and I would just go absolutely stark raving insane. I would get some sort of illness. My life would fall apart. I just was really afraid.
Yeah, because that is what they told us, and that's what we believe for years,
Right.
especially of children during those formative years. But I will tell you this, there's really nothing that they can do. That is the beauty of it. You know, I'm on here talking smack about Scientology on a daily basis, and there's really nothing they do about it besides just, gaslighting internet trolls here and there. There's really nothing that they can do. That's the truth of it.
What they're doing is illegal, right? You cannot harass people. You can look in their garbage once they throw it out. You can do that.
Yeah.
Um,
But I
but
mean, there's so many people now who are out and sharing about Scientology that they can't possibly harass in the way that they used to. And the other thing is the reaction is so quick. The exposure of it is so quick. Like the foot bullets that they've given themselves over the years, I think they kind of learn to a degree, but there's so many more. They're still going to try. They'll do things here and there, depending on who it is.
yeah, it's
I
about
do.
money and power, right? Like, I
Yeah.
have no power, I have no money.
Yeah. And
Um,
if they think they can get to you, if they think that, you will take the bait, and by you, I mean anybody who's speaking out
right,
against
right,
Scientology, that's all they can do. So they try to bait us with certain things to see if we take the bait and then go off on a tangent about it or get distracted by it or
right.
personalize it in some way. And the beauty is that's just not the case as long as you don't do that. But if you know enough, like, okay, you can recognize when that kind of stuff is being done, then it's easy to just ignore it because it's just not part of your life and what you're doing. So really, there's not, I feel like, not much that
Yeah, I'm
they
still a little bit
can do.
sketched out. I I don't know how many people are watching this, so
Mhm.
don't tell my mom, please. Oh.
I'm gonna grab a couple questions
Oh,
here
yeah, sure.
too.
Please.
Let's see. No, Corinne does not have a channel at the moment.
No, I mean, I don't have a real live channel. I have some videos on YouTube. One where I cut all my hair off for a friend, and, one where I think I'm excited about some speakers doing some stuff to these little pieces of paper. That's it. I'm not a content creator. I mean, I have, like, an Instagram, but I don't talk about Scientology on that.
Yeah.
It's more about redoing my house, and, um, I had some pugs at one point in time, which that's a whole other portion of my life, which was really fulfilling, to be honest.
Yeah,
So, yeah, no, I'm not really out there.
no problem. Indigo's insights. Do you think you felt Natalie was so much older than you because of the clear division Scientology makes between staff members and people on different levels of the bridge? So you were a messenger. I was in the estates org. I think is kind of the point, maybe.
So in technically, I think I would have felt like I was older or more mature.
Yeah.
Um, but really, I don't know how I felt at that time in the past, but I do know, obviously, I was hanging out with people who were several years younger than me, and I felt comfortable with that. Because Scientology has been in my life since I was 6 or 5. I don't know when my parents actually joined, but it was before my father passed away. So he passed away when I was 7. And I would say that I was so sheltered, so sheltered. No television. I was allowed to watch bloopers and funny jokes and the A Team.
Mhm.
That's 2 shows I was allowed to watch. We didn't really eat a lot of sugar, and these are not things that are for Scientology, really. I think the consumption of general media is forbidden in the Sea Org.
Mhm.
You're only allowed to watch movies that are on then tape, but now, you
Mhm.
know,
Or a movie that
DVD or
Tom Cruise
streaming.
is in.
Oh, yeah. Or John Travolta, didn't he do Battlefield Earth?
God, that
Dude,
was a
I
cool
read I
period
read
ever.
all of Battlefield Earth. I
Me
read
too.
all of that, and I thought it was awesome, and my mom was like, "Ooh, book 5, I don't really know," and they're, like,
Is that the one with
taking
all the sex?
yeah, where they're, like, taking cheese graters to people and
Yeah.
whatever, and,
Mission
like
Earth. I know. I read it too, and I was like and I honestly, like I mean, granted, we were limited to what we could read in the Sea Org and inside you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And I remember reading it thinking like, "Wait a minute. We can read this? Like, there's all kinds of sexual stuff in here. This
Oh,
is like soft porn."
book
I'm like,
5 was, like it was t but, when I'm young like that, like, this is before I was 16, this is before I went back into the Sea Org, and I read all those books, and the thing is, I think people who are 14 or just inexperienced or not exposed to that stuff
yeah,
doesn't it's not sexual, I think, at that point, or at least it wasn't for me. I just was like, "Man, these people are messed up. What is happening here?"
it's a whole 'nother thing.
Yeah.
Kestrel is asking, "Do kids, teens do acid, aka LSD, to make themselves unqualified for the Sea Org?" Well, I knew a few who have.
I don't know if that's true, but I suggest it. I
Yeah,
suggest it. Make yourself
yeah,
ineligible
yeah.
quickly.
Or at least lie about it. You
Yeah,
know what I'm
right, for
saying?
sure.
You don't have to actually go do
Oh, yeah.
LSD. If
I'm
you
not
have
suggesting that.
yeah. Yeah, no, go do LSD so
Don't
you
do
can get
LSD on my
stupid.
suggestion, okay? That's your personal choice. But just say you have and get yourself ineligible. That would be fine.
Exactly. Did you experience a sense of wanting to please your parents as a young kid, or was your involvement in the Sea Org completely independent from your relationship with your parents?
That is a good question, right? Because I did want to please my parents, but oddly enough, I did not know that they were in the Sea Org when we were in Florida that first time. Eh, so to give you an understanding, my dad was a navigator for Swiss Air when cockpits still had the three-man crew. And so he was gone all the time anyway. And my mom loved to travel. And I was not, uh, I don't think I was really planned. I was a happy surprise. My mom was very happy that I came along. Um, but she had intended to travel a lot. So most of my life, my parents had been in and out and traveling and doing things, and I'd stay with my grandparents, and it was a great upbringing. It wasn't bad by any means, but I was really used to and accustomed to that.
Yeah,
So
tap your camera again because I think it just got
oh,
unblurry, or
boop.
focus it in there. There you go.
All right. Thank you. So I don't think I wanted to please them. That wasn't to please them. The first time it was because I made $16 a week in cash for stuffing envelopes. Okay. That's where that was. And then the second time was I really actually wanted to get away from my stepdad. My stepdad really was so teen angst, right?
Mm.
16, you already don't like your parents always that much anyway. Like, that's not unusual. But now just add an escape that your parents cannot tell you not to do and that they might support.
Yeah, exactly. Going into the Sea
Oh,
Organization.
yeah. It's like donating your child to the church, right? Like every family at one point in time in the Catholic religion had to send a son or a daughter to the church to become a monk or a priest or a nun, right?
Yeah.
So my mom was like, "Well, I guess it's kinda like that."
Yeah, that's a way I think it makes it more palatable to Scientologists.
Yeah, so I was
Remind me
not trying to
again.
please them. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Why product so remind me again why products could not have sense in the Sea Org. Now, I remember there being flag orders. I remember the rules about why, or the rules that you cannot have any scented products in the Sea Organization, but I don't recall the exact why beyond it bothered L. Ron Hubbard. Do you know?
So maybe it did bother L. Ron Hubbard, but this is what I distinctly remember, and I think I've taken this into other things. He said that it made it smell like a third-rate jail cell. I just think that maybe he as a person was bothered by scents, but now let's talk. I wonder if there's anybody here who's ever been in the Navy or on a boat, you know, there's several hundred people living right
Mm,
next to each other. You're literally sharing your bunk with a person, right? So
yeah,
like in the Navy or you're out there on a ship, you have one bed for 2 people, and they, like, share shifts. Maybe it's even three people for one bed.
Mhm.
And using scented products in the Navy is really not, I think, something that they support. Do they say you can't have anything scented? I don't know about that, but I think it's just that close quarters, and if you remember, well, nobody remembers, if you know L. Ron Hubbard, when he was getting kind of, like, chased out of a variety of different cities, he decided just to keep his cult going on a ship
Mhm.
on
Mhm.
international waters where nobody could get to him. So,
Exactly right.
whee! And that's how we started this Sea Org.
The fake space navy.
Ooh, I love my uniform, all them strappies and stuff. Woo!
Fat Grammy wants to know, did you have a hard time passing your GED or how did you know enough?
I took that GED, and guess where I scored high? Reading
Reading,
comprehension. Guess where I scored really low? Math,
math.
history, science. Uh, but Larry Dennison, poor Larry Dennison, oh boy, they must have paid him so much money. He then does word clearing with you. He
Mhm.
goes over every single question with you that you got wrong, and he marks it correct, and then you get to sign it at the end, and whee! You pass your GED.
Was he Sea Org or non-Sea Org? I know he was a
Non-Sea Org. Oh,
Scientologist because
sorry, people.
he
Say
was
it again.
a non-Sea Org Scientologist who worked with the Sea Org kids, because I think my sister said the same thing, that he basically helped them he cheat on the test.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, he knows the answers. So you just, like, he'd let you take the test and, hey, maybe hopefully somehow you would pass, but if you didn't pass, he would, like, I think he tried to stay within some bounds of ethics, like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I think I did teach this person a quadratic equation," but
Mm,
I don't think no. Uh,
yeah,
and then he would just send it in and you get your GED, and that really got, the state off Scientology's back because
yeah.
they were like, "This person's 16, they can work full time, they don't have to go to school, um,
But they need to
just
have a GED.
right, here's your
Yeah.
GED."
Joe's asking if you get ever got over the struggle with food.
Thanks for asking, and that's a very caring question. Um, no, I think that is a lifelong struggle for me. I've dabbled in anorexia at some point in time, but it's only like during times of real stress. I definitely have like some body dysmorphia. I always thought that I was too chonky for the world, when in reality, man, am I strong. I am so strong. Like, I just on any given day, even if I haven't worked out for like 6 months or a year, I'll still be able to bench something silly, like, for me as a girl, like 60 pounds just out of the blue. Um,
Mhm.
like, my legs are less strong, but what I'm saying is, like, I've had to change all that into feeding myself for, um, energy, and now
Yeah,
I do eat whatever I want, whenever I want. I have amazingly not gotten so chonky that I can still fit through doors and ride my ride my mountain bike and really just enjoy life.
yeah.
Visually, I still wish I was like, a 13-year-old pencil, but I know that I'm not a pencil or 13 years old.
No,
So,
but I think you look amazing.
well, that's just my head, that's all you see.
Well, you just stood up. I got a full boobs and mid-body
Oh,
look.
yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah,
You're
so we're
welcome.
you're good. Melody says there's something so captivating and compelling to listen to Corinne tell the truth of her time in Scientology as such a young child. Very moving.
No, thank you.
Uh, does it matters asking Corinne, what years were you at Delphi?
Ooh,
You know, at
when
Tracy W.
uh, so I was really good friends with Arwen Larson and Stephanie Rip. Those were my, like, ride or dies. Um, we used to pretend we were horses and gallop through the halls on all 4 feet. I was there from 70, maybe like mid 76 to maybe 80.
76 to 80. And
Something
by the
like
way,
that, because, like, here's some embarrassing stories. Let's get this right out of the way. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I would strip down completely nude and swing my T-shirt above my head and sing, "Froggy Baby's here to stay." Uh, who knows why? Again, I don't think it was sexual at all, but boys thought it was fun. Uh like, I definitely was I was I was a wild kid. I don't even know. So you might remember me from those days, or when I would get angry in class when I didn't understand a word, and I
Mhm,
would slam some clay down on the thing and run out of there and punch walls and be angry.
mhm.
I definitely like, kudos to my mom for, like, not putting me in the shed or something, like,
Yeah,
this is what she
exactly.
had to
Not
live with,
locking you
you
in the
know?
garage. Ex-witness Vernon wants to know, did you make it to the state of clear in Scientology? Did you do the Pura, which is the sauna program?
I did do the Purif, and that's a great story. I never made it to clear, because I was always getting security checked, because I always thought I was doing something wrong.
Mhm.
So, if you think you're doing something wrong, you probably are, so they're gonna give you security checks. I did the purification rundown when I was 11,
Wow.
11, 12. You're in the sauna for 5 hours.
A
They
day.
gave me a day.
7
They
days a week, even on
Oh, yeah.
Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Whatever it is, right? However months, whatever the end phenomenon is, which I don't know actually what the end phenomenon is
Yeah, I
for the
don't remember.
purification rundown. Um, so I was doing that. I was given so much niacin because I just, again, 110%, I'm not gonna, like, embarrass myself and not be able to take these vitamins. Uh, I was on, like, a crazy high dose of niacin. There was one time I was in that sauna and I passed out from probably heat exhaustion, but you
Mhm.
know what they said it was? They said it was me running out, so, in my fat, which FYI, at 11 or 12, there was 0 fat on my body. I am 11 or 12 years old. I am just a little tiny pencil, and they said out of my fat came the anesthesia that I had had when I had had surgery for a hernia when I was a child.
And
But
that's why you
no,
passed out
they
in the sauna.
they basically found me passed out in the sauna. Like, I don't even know if 11 or 12-year-old kids sweat. I don't know what the physiological happenings for that is, but to this day, and this has been why I've been told, but I actually haven't looked it up, and Doctor Google should tell me. Um, but, like, maybe some military service people have experienced this where you have heat exhaustion, and after that, your body doesn't really know how to regulate sweating. Dude,
Yeah.
I am on my mountain bike. I am soaked from head to toe. I just sweat like there's no tomorrow. So, yeah, I did do the purification rundown way too young.
Yeah.
Uh, like, it's just nuts. I did it for a long time too because I had done it when I was up at Delphi School, and then I had to finish it when came back down to Flag. And then I did do the HQS, which I don't remember, Hubbard Qualified Scientologist course.
Yes, correct.
And that matured me a lot because, yeah, if you are taking an 11-some-year-old person and making them study in detail how to audit other people, like, and to do all those training routines, dude, yeah, that was also crazy. Like, those, like you said, they are 100% desensitizing. I can sit in a room of complete chaos and just dial in and be nonplussed about what's happening around me and not react at all.
Mhm. Yeah,
I
I hear
think that's
that.
crazy. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, then you don't really process what's happening or maybe even, if there's danger coming at you. It's really insidious.
Yeah.
You woo. The more people that speak out, the more resources being stretched to harass exes. Eventually, the resources are going to run out.
I like that because more people are probably getting out.
Mhm.
And I Natalie, is there anything like when you were in the Sea Org that you were asked to do that you today regret, like recruiting somebody? I only ask because that's my next little story, but, like,
Yeah,
or were an
let's
asshole to
see.
somebody. Oh, sorry, you were a jerk to somebody.
Mm, Fortunately, like, I was nobody in the Sea Org. I joined the Sea Org, went to the estates organization. My plan was always just to keep my head down and not get in too much trouble. Um, I did not that I can recall, even though I went on Sea Org recruitment missions, I might have gotten people to sign contracts, but I don't think anybody ever arrived.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Um, yeah, not that really pops up that I actually regret, like, I regret that I do that. I think the biggest thing for me was what I regret is the attitude I had about, non-Scientologists or even Scientologists that weren't in the Sea Org. It
Mhm.
was just this ridiculously dumb, inflated sense of, because that's what we were told, right? We're doing the work, like, we're
Yeah.
doing the real work and everybody else is a slacker, and I push back so much on that today, if I hear it in other contexts, in other situations, because that feels so culty to me,
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you're the only one, you're doing the work, no one else would, no one," like Tom Cruise. Scientologists are the only one who can help you, and I know this isn't a Scientology thing because I heard it from people never in Scientology, "We're the ones doing the real work." And I
Right.
go, "That's so culty," because everybody makes a contribution that is making a contribution that is showing up. And I see it now, and I used to see it that way, that we're the only ones doing the real work, and I realized that comes from a place as of a complete and utter lack of gratitude, and I
Yeah.
didn't have gratitude when I was a Scientologist. Definitely not in the Sea Org, and in coming out of that, that is one of the biggest changes for me that I feel improved my life, because I can be grateful for something somebody does that's the smallest thing, and I think
Mhm.
it's the most beautiful thing when anybody tries to help somebody in any way. Why would we judge that as being, "You're not doing enough," which is how it was in Scientology. "You're not contributing enough," or "You're not doing it correctly." That's not for anybody to judge. That's so
Right.
culty.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Um, I don't know if you're out there, Chris. I recruited a boy named Chris. I can't remember his last name. And I really talked to him for a long time and I like overcame all of his objections. And he even was one of the people who called me when I was sort of like drifting and I was here in Pennsylvania and not really engaging in Scientology at all. And I know that they, like, found him to call me because that is one of my biggest regrets. If you ever want to blow and have a place to go, I will take care of you. I will make sure that you integrate into society as we know it and get you a job and, I don't know, get you back on your feet. You're not alone. I'm sorry I can't find you.
Yeah, maybe,
Yeah.
maybe one day when we're not online, you'll have to tell me his last name and maybe we can
I
meet.
don't know his last name. I have no idea. I don't remember. I
Oh,
don't remember.
wow. Yeah.
I did send you his picture. Um,
That
Chris
Chris?
Chris is the boy in the, he's like in a tracksuit kind of.
I'm pulling it up quick. Not to show, but yeah, I think I know which one you
He's
mean.
very sweet. He's not on the skateboard and it's, not Jorge.
He's not in the uniform, it's not
No.
Jorge. Yeah, he's wearing a white jacket,
Yeah, something like that,
right?
like a little
You
like a
recruited
gray
Chris?
tracksuit.
Chris ended up, like, going to Income or something, I think. He
What?
grew up.
I mean, hey, that's good.
Handsome too.
Aw, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
Well,
because when you sent me the picture of the kid, Chris, I went, "Oh, that's
you
Chris
knew
from."
that. You knew him. Okay.
Yeah, he
Oh.
used to come through the dining room, so I think he was in Income, maybe
Oh.
it was Executive Strata. Now, I have no idea what happened to him after that, but
As of 5 years ago or 6 years ago, he must have still been in because he contacted me and reached out to me, and he
oh,
was, like, trying to save me, and I was just you know, I know he's being watched, and I know that his conversations probably are being listened to, or at least he has to, like, do a full report on it. So it
Yeah.
was really difficult for me where I'm like, "Well, you know, uh, I'm here if."
Yeah. That's funny. I didn't realize that
Aw.
that was the Chris. Is he a second generation Scientologist?
I think so. I think his, family was not on staff. They were public, you
Yeah, I
know,
was
so
gonna
of course
say
he
'cause
probably comes from privilege or money. Most people who are stay public are the people that can pay for the bridge, right? So
yeah,
it's better to have them out there bringing the money in to like
yeah.
versus recruiting them. But recruiting their kids is really good because then now you really have your meat hooks in that family.
'Cause now
And
they can't leave because 'cause they'll lose their child.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and I do think that to me, that's just like maybe even done unbeknownst to being done, right? Like there's different strata that know why things are being done the way they are. And some people are just little worker ants. And I really feel bad for them because I don't think they understand how toxic and horrible the whole environment is, like constantly being written up for things and ratted on and
Mhm.
things that aren't even real. You're being ratted on. It's
Yeah.
just wild.
The snitch culture, the
Oh,
telling, it's
hi.
interesting to me too because it's like it's so much about in Scientology and the C where you're always reporting on each other so that it's so because it's good for that person, and I remember, in leaving Scientology and feeling like, "Wow, that is so crazy, this going around and reporting on people." And then as I get out in life and the years go by and I see well, for example, even here on YouTube, in different chats, I'll see even for myself, somebody say, "Natalie said blah, blah, blah," and I'm reading it. I'm like, "Oh, what did I say?" And I read it. I'm like, "I didn't say that."
Does that trigger you though? Like, to me,
No.
people talking poorly about others when they are not around sets something off in me that is I cannot take it. I do not like that. Even
Yeah.
like if they're speaking the truth. If somebody says, "Hey, blah blah keeps not shutting the door," I get really like, go talk to them personally. Tell them to shut the door. Put a note up. Handle it.
Mhm.
I cannot handle like, to me, that is unacceptable behavior to me. That's, like, the most but I think it comes from the fact that people are writing KRs on each other all the time, you know?
Yeah, very much so, very much so. It doesn't I mean, I recognize it is, like, it's not a desirable behavior, but it doesn't bother me because maybe it's because I know that it has nothing to do with me, you
Oh, it
know?
has everything to do with me, so maybe this is a personal thing where I'm just like, "I just don't like it when that happens, and maybe I did it too." Like, I am definitely sure, like, somebody next to me could do a crime, and then a police officer could come up to me and go, "Did you do this crime?" And I am so indoctrinated to take responsibility for my actions and everybody else's actions around
Mhm.
me that, "Well, I guess I did. I probably did. I should told him not to. Maybe once I told him that this would be a fun thing to do." Like immediately I take responsibility for a lot of stupid stuff that happens around me, and I have learned to try and not do that. I
Yeah.
try not to I also, like, have that defensive reaction where I'm like, "That's not me, it's him." You know, and I have to, like, tone that down too. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's kind of this happy medium with what really for me, it all comes back to, what can I actually control? What is within my sphere of influence? And really, it's mostly just myself.
Yeah,
It's so
true.
much easier. And I'm just at a point in my life where I'm kind of tired. It's been a very eventful life
Yeah, for sure.
and in many ways. And I'm like, I don't know. So I keep saying, like, I'm mentally retiring. I'm going to keep working, but I am mentally retiring. I'm just checking out from whatever people think it is I'm supposed to be doing or, opinions about me. It's just like I can't control any of that. I can only how I choose to show up. And because I feel like life is short and being already in my 50s, looking ahead at how many more years I have, I don't want to spend any of it embroiled in upset or battle and things that are just not necessary. And I
Right.
don't even consider what I do with exposing Scientology every day as a battle or fight, because I'm not battling or fighting. I am exposing and showing. People
Right.
can make their own decisions. If somebody chooses to support Scientology after being presented with the information, okay,
That's
next,
their choice, right?
yeah,
I guess.
next. I'm happy to move on to the next person. I have no desire to sit down and try to convince anybody about anything that I believe that they don't believe in. If you want to have a discussion and an exchange of ideas, I find those conversations fascinating and I love that. But I don't feel the need anymore to try and convince somebody of my rightness or that my way is the way, because I don't believe that. I don't believe that there's one way, one solution, one person with all of the answers. Because when I did believe that, I was in a cult.
Yes, exactly. Like, I mean, it could also be like an aging thing, right? Like a lot of women blossom in their 50s
Mhm.
because they can let go of so much. No
Yeah,
longer are we asked to be girls. We're really full-fledged women. Um, we can do whatever we want. If I
yeah,
want to build a shed, then I'll build a shed. If I want to bake some bread, I will bake some bread. Like, I've just been shedding those stereotypes that go along with being a human being. Like, people go, "Oh, you look like this, so you must have these qualities."
yeah.
And because I'm changing rapidly, you can't see that on the screen here, but I'm aging. I'm aging fast. And I look at myself and I go, "Well, even the things I thought about myself with the way I might look don't apply anymore." And so I think that also is just a blossoming of
Yeah.
the
You
next
kinda
stage in life.
you just don't care, like, we're only a year apart,
Oh, yeah.
and I think there's something magical that happens in your 50s where you pretty much you're like, "Yeah, I don't know, I'm kind of okay with it, like, think what you want. I'm not even gonna try and convince you."
Well, yeah, because any kind of convincing I've ever tried to do has ended up in people suffering by having to join the Sea Org. Like,
Yeah,
I we've both run around in this space where we were in a cult or a religion, quote unquote, or a belief system that
yeah,
was not standard or norm for what area we grew up in. So you can't share it, right? Like,
yeah,
um, and anytime I have tried to share with it, I just felt like this weird robotic weirdness come over me and I'd be like, "You must do this," you know? And in reality, it's, you cannot convince other people. I think you can give them data and you can say, "All right, we'll percolate on this data and see if this ends up being something that you can apply or use."
yeah,
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 yeah.
whether it resonates or not. And the thing that I've come to learn since breaking free from this cult is that if it resonates with me as true and it doesn't resonate with somebody else, it doesn't change my truth. It's okay. I don't feel threatened by it or that, no, I need to convince them that it is this way, or I need to convince them to think these thoughts about this person. Even
Oh,
though
right. Yeah,
with
for sure.
Scientology, it's like, here's my experience, here's what they're doing, you guys make your own decision about it. I believe Scientology is a human trafficking cult, and I'll go on about it. It's so freeing because it really, I don't know, you realize that there's so many things that we can't control. And I think the lie, and we were made to believe in the Sea Org, is that we are responsible for everything. So we have to act on every little outpoint. We have to correct people like we're the morality police. Like, we
And
get to judge. Why do we get to judge anybody? And I think that's my biggest takeaway. Cause and I went through a lot. People who are familiar with my story, like what I went through, what my family went through. So for me to sit here and say one of my biggest wins in leaving Scientology was the freedom to stop judging people, the freedom
right.
to stop feeling like I had to do anything about it, the freedom to not feel that I have to react because somebody said something, or you know what I'm saying? Even when
Yeah,
people bring it to me and go, "Oh, so and so said blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Okay."
right.
Maybe they were having a bad day, maybe they really feel that way, but that's okay. It's alright because my time is limited. It's like my most valuable resource right now, and my attention and what I want to feel and experience every single day, I don't want to waste any more time on that. I just
Yeah.
want, it's very important to me to continue to expose Scientology. It's very important to me to, just create a life and security for myself so that I can continue to expose Scientology and have experiences in life with people that I care about and new people that I meet. Outside of that, I just can't be bothered about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty mentally healthy, right? Like, I
I don't
definitely
know, is it? I've been wondering.
well, I mean, maybe you're speaking to the choir. Maybe that's, somebody else can weigh in on that. I'm not a psychological professional. But letting go of that stuff is great.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanna stress to people is your experience as a public Scientologist,
Mhm.
I don't know if you understand how much grind goes into your experience. When you go down to Flag and you have a lovely remade room and your food is cooked right and the building is clean and new and upkept, that is done through enforced labor. That is people who are up, at dawn and they do not go to bed until 10, sometimes 12. It depends on your schedule, what your organization's schedule is. Like, it's like when I go buy a pair of jeans, I need to remember that probably somebody who does not have access to things in life because they are trafficked and working in one of these sweatshops made this for me. Not that they knew they were making it for me, but like the Sea Org is a completely different animal. So if you're on public, if you were to ever sit down with a Sea Org member, they may not even be able to divulge to you what their schedule and what their life looks
Mhm.
what their birthing situation is like. Like getting married is so you can have a space where it's just you two people versus 12 or, you know, 11 other people living in your same room,
Yeah.
crammed in there. It's not the penthouse, okay? Like, that was an anomaly. That
That
was
was
that
an
was
anomaly that you
that
had.
was stolen housing,
Yeah.
okay?
This is a great question from Atkins in Texas. What brings you the most joy now in your freedom?
Wow. To be able to just express myself, to say whatever I want and not have it held against me later. And not because I'm running around saying awful things, I hope. But like, even if I have like maybe a political view or I tell somebody, hey, maybe, I don't know, I'm going to use like a really lame example. Like maybe if you ate less sugar, you wouldn't be feeling so weird about your insulin or whatever, like
Mm.
nobody comes back and writes a knowledge report about me and then threatens to send me to the RPF because they didn't like it. That gives me the most sense like this. I just feel more free to just speak my mind. And
Yeah.
even if I'm wrong, I am more than happy to evaluate new information and go, oh, yeah, I was totally off base on that.
Yeah.
Uh, Personally, pugs. Pugs make me happy. Having pugs, volunteering at the hospital with my pugs probably taught me empathy more than anything else because I was still a little bit robotic and like, you must make it go right kind of person. And seeing all those children in the hospital and having my pugs who are just doggos, they're just little doggos. They knew that those people needed comfort and they were just such good little comfort animals. It was so cute to watch. Uh, that was the other thing that was most freeing, where I was just doing something for nothing, as in, like, you know, what am I contributing to society other than maybe just a little bit of joy? And now I found out that that is actually
Huge.
instrumental and
Yeah.
huge in keeping us sane and happy and caring about each other. So,
Yeah. You'd think that we'd be more focused on that. And I think that's kind of like where I'm at now. And especially with everything I went through with Tony, is realizing that, like, why would you waste any time? It's
yeah.
just so much is taken for granted. And why would you? I don't know. Maybe that's why certain things that, because I have friends who are like, that doesn't bother you, like this thing. And I'm like, no, I'm okay with it. It'll be something ridiculous that bothers me, like something just completely benign and stupid. But
But there's no use for spending that energy on something,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
I'm
exactly.
looking to grow as a human being, spread positivity, um, just lift people up that I can lift up, and look for people who can help me lift myself up and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah,
I am just as deserving as a human being as all the people who I wanna take care of. It is okay if somebody else were to step in my life and go, "Hey, I could give you this job opportunity," and I wouldn't feel guilty about it.
yeah,
Before I just was like, "You must make it on your own. You cannot accept help from anyone." And that could just be a trauma response, or it could be a Scientology post-traumatic stress response, you
yeah,
know?
I get that. I think it'd be fun. I know that we'll come on. I told you earlier, I said I would love to sometimes when topic comes up, have you come on and share that perspective of
Sure.
when it comes to Scientology and the Sea Org and all of that. So I'm hoping that you'll come in and do that because this has just been wonderful. I've just enjoyed chatting with you. And I think that the audience is absolutely, everybody here in the chat has enjoyed it and found it enlightening. And most of all, I want to just thank you for doing that because I know what a big step that can be to publicly share your story and let you know that when I left Scientology, part of what helped me leave were the people who were sharing their personal story.
Yeah. I
That
haven't engaged in too much of that, and to be honest, I will be super freaking paranoid at whatever comes in on my email, or if I get some strange, crazy text, I'm, like, gonna be on high alert. I definitely I feel like I, like, opened a can of worms, but really, like you, I just wanna expose the truth. Um, I know people can get wins or successes from being in Scientology, but you can also do that in very non-high control groups by reading self-help books and growing yourself as a human being. So,
that is so true. Kimberly says, from this never in, I found your story inspirational. You're amazingly strong, kind, and insightful. Dip says, this has been an amazing day having Karin. Thank you both. I mean, you're gonna have to
thank
go
you
through
guys.
and read all of these. This was amazing. Happy you came on to Natalie's channel to tell your story. Thanks for speaking out. It's appreciated. I mean, just there's just so much. I mean, comment after comment after comment. You'll have to go through and read them and see them. So there's a lot of appreciation.
An
So
ego boost, huh? I mean,
yeah,
I could use that. I could
yeah,
use that.
exactly. Take it.
After that sewer got punched through and I had to do that, like, I could use some
Some
goodness in
good
my life.
vibes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I
Take in
guess
all the good
vibing with
vibes.
that.
Exactly. It's all good stuff. And
Okay,
everybody,
good.
before you head out, if everybody could hit the like button, check your subscribe as well. I would appreciate that. Corinne, you hold tight while I log off here.
All right.
Otherwise, goodbye to everybody. Have an amazing cult-free day.
Yeah.